Hello, good peoples. I got my wrong background up. It's my play background. We
Good
had a
evening.
wonderful event, right, Jeremy?
Good
It was a
evening, good evening.
wonderful event.
I think it was. I was going to thank you for pulling up. That was phenomenal, honestly. That was definitely a good event. We'll talk soon about that. Definitely missed everyone that didn't come, I will say, but good to be here.
That's all right.
Good evening,
They were
everybody.
doing other things in the community.
No, I know everyone was busy. It was a busy weekend, actually. That was a very busy weekend.
Hey, Carly, how we doing? Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think we need one more, if I'm counting correctly.
Good
Ed.
evening.
Thank you, Ricardo and Paul, for being back for the show on the road as we go through all the committees.
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having us. Appreciate it.
Much better. So usually we have one of the biggest committees and we're a little short today. I haven't heard from people, so that means people are just trying to get on. I know I left the city real early, so I wouldn't have to call Carly and Rev and say, you might have to go while I'm on traffic, but
Good quorum.
we have quorum. Well, welcome everybody to CB11 Youth and Education Committee meeting for the month of October. Look forward. It's the Hispanic Heritage Month, so we don't want to forget. And being in El Barrio, make sure we pass on our heritage. And I'm an Italian Puerto Rican, so my people settled here in East Harlem many, many years ago and intertwined in the community. So I'm glad to be here. For those that don't know, I'm also the director of the Children's Aid East Harlem Center in East Harlem and run a community center that we have had stakes in this community since 1953. So again, I want to welcome everybody. We do need to go over a few of the ground rules. We ask that nobody speak until called upon. If you do need to speak and you want to say something, to please raise your hand. CB11 board members will go first, and then we will entertain questions from the public. We also ask that you kind of limit the use and the function of the chat to just maybe sharing some information, but not really going back and forth and having dialogue in the chat. We want to make sure that everybody's focused in the moment and that we're paying attention to the presenters as well as those talking and speaking as well. Again, if you have any problems and can't communicate, you could reach out to Carly through the chat or use the raise hand chat, the raise hand function. And we'll try to do as best as that we can in addressing all concerns and issues raised. We have not a long agenda tonight. And we do, before we start, I just kind of want to frame something that one of the things that we've been struggling with, I think just in Community Board 11 or maybe another, is how do we make sure our meetings are timely, efficient, and move along a continuum. And I think with Zoom, our meetings have gotten, we've always had long meetings in youth and education, but I think with Zoom, they've gotten a lot longer. And I'm kind of pulling on something that one of my co-chairs used to do when they chaired a committee, and that was like, kind of just put time frames onto presenters and announcements so that when you do prepare to come and talk, if you're giving the update, to kind of limit it in that time so that we can function and continue to go through and have a more fluid meeting and make sure that we keep people through the end of the meeting as well. Sometimes we start losing people at the end as it runs long. So we're not saying like 5 minutes and it's a hard stop and just stop. But when you think when you're going to talk, try to limit it, focus on the important points. If you do need additional time because there's something really highlighted, maybe Jeremy says, I got to really talk about this program and this new event that's coming up. And, we'll say, no problem. We'll make that and make that affordable. But I think it's just kind of healthy. And I tell you, to be honest, I like giving people time. So I think some of the enrichment that we've had in the dialogue and we've set up the meetings and have the announcements and have Caleras from CEC4 here and the superintendent from D4, and has been so rewarding and so enriching. And Jeremy, your office has been here as long as I've been chairing this committee. So, you know, we just want to make sure that we're moving forward and making sure we get to as many things as possible, because there's so much enriching information that I think sometimes we miss. So that's my shtick. We do need to do the call to order and do the adoption of the agenda and so forth and so forth. So Carly, please.
Sure. I'm going to call the roll. Andino. Brown.
Present.
Donadell.
Present.
Giordano.
Present.
Green.
Here.
Harvey. Thought I said his name. Harvey. Heredia. Martin.
Here.
Robinson Teague. Rodriguez.
Present.
Scott. Schuler.
Present.
Wu. Harvey. I'm going to circle back to you so you can say it out loud.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, we have quorum.
Again, thank you, everybody. I do have some dogs. I have 3, so you might hear them barking in the background, so much apologies. So we would also like to do adoption of the agenda. We do not have this September committee meetings, and I'll take responsibility for that. Some of you may or may not know, we had a loss in my family, my mother-in-law, 2 weeks ago, so just been challenging taking care of other things, and we'll catch up upon those. I do believe it's John Green's opportunity to do the minutes going forward. John's already ahead of the game. Go ahead, John. Much appreciated. So we're doing adoption of the agenda, right? It's all kind of. How do we
Yes,
do
if
that?
no one
going?
objects.
Right. If there's any objections, we take it that it's accepted. With seeing no objections, I don't see in the chat, but I'm not looking in the chat, so we will continue on. So we do have our informational updates. I see Calaris here with us tonight. I do not see anybody else, but we didn't have Calaris last time, so it's great to have Calaris this time by herself. And we'll give her a few extra minutes since we don't have anybody else. I think there's a lot going on, and Calaris, welcome.
Thank you, David. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. So I know you had our superintendent in the last meeting, which is great. She's always really good and transparent and sharing what's going on in the district. Our CEC meeting is actually tomorrow night from 6 to 8. I will also disclose that we don't have an AA because of the vaccine mandates. So we are currently, if we haven't responded to an email to the CEC address, is because I don't have access to it yet. And we're still working on some of those things out. So we've been relying on the district staff to help support some of the things that we've been trying to do. The last meeting, so as a CEC, in the last meeting, we had several special meetings, and the calendar meeting, we have passed 5 different resolutions, 4 of which have been focused on COVID safety and guidelines. If you know, the COVID mitigation measures have been loosened a little bit. And even in classrooms where children aren't vaccinated, the whole classroom does not get informed unless they are a close contact to somebody that has tested COVID positive. And that has raised some concerns for us because we do know that COVID is airborne and it can be spread past 3 feet. And we're concerned because our elementary school students are not vaccinated. And so we've drafted several resolutions that not just ask the Department of Education to go back to the 6 feet rule and to also communicate to parents if there is a positive case in the classroom so they can decide whether they will self-quarantine. But we have also asked for parents to be held accountable for COVID testing every week. So one of the things that we have been looking at is we've been looking at the data pretty strictly. And we've been collaborating with epidemiologists and physicians to kind of see where the Department of Education is falling short. And one of the things that we have been seeing in the last month is that District 4 is one of the lowest districts that has been receiving support in terms of school COVID testing. We can talk about other tests, but we actually rank 6th from the top, from the bottom. And so we roughly have 1.5% of our school population being tested by the city test and trace. The other tests, folks that have tested positive outside have informed school communities, and we do have several schools that have classroom closures as well as partial classroom closures currently. But it's also taking the Situation Room several days to inform the school community like what the intervention will be. And so we do have a couple of concerns and are trying to elevate that to the level of the Panel for Education Policy. Fortunately, Sean from Gail Brewer's office is, constantly keeping in touch to check, because we have been advocating to get more buses, more of the pop-up testing sites to come to our district. So the first school that was closed was not within District 4. It was actually a District 5 school that is a District 75 school, but they had 29 COVID cases, and that's when they decided to close. The other thing is that we don't have a clear guidance on what the threshold is to close a school. That's the other thing. So there's a lot of questions in terms of the Department of Health and the DOE for the mitigation factors, and our CEC has been trying to elevate those concerns, in addition to trying to make sure that children have devices in case they do have to quarantine at home. As of yet, we don't have a full report on how many devices are missing in school communities, mostly because some of these devices are now being used in classrooms. Folks don't really need it in their house. And so we're trying to encourage school communities, particularly through their SLTs, to do a needs assessment and make sure that students have the devices that they need. Another topic that we've been broaching and that we broached at our last CEC meeting is mayoral control. We would love it if there was a governance structure of schools where communities had more input in the things that are happening. We do firmly believe that some of these inequities that we're seeing with respect to resources, with respect to COVID mandates or mitigation factors, with respect to access and resources in our schools have to do with the fact that the mayor is making all of the decisions. And so we want to engage the community in having more intentional conversations in terms of what it would look like. Like, what would it look like if we went back to school boards? Are school boards the way to go? Is there another governance structure that we believe would better suit our communities? And so we're starting to engage in that conversation. There is a coalition called the Coalition to Finally End Mayoral Control. It's got some of the OGs, like folks that have been organizing for like 40 years around this. And so we're kind of taking their lead to try to engage our CECs in those conversations. Tomorrow, if you come to our CEC, you'll also there will be a presentation on district planning, which basically breaks down the number of our schools, roughly how many students are in those school communities, our charter schools, and the utilization of our different buildings. So we'll get an update tomorrow so that we can start thinking about capital plans. Yes, I will provide a link in a minute. We can start thinking about capital plans for our schools. Our liaisons from our CEC are visiting schools. One of the things that has come up also that we are planning in the next couple of months, there are 3 forums that I want to tell you about. One, we have been tasked by the DOE to start talking about what family engagement looks like and what does it look like as we're thinking about the restructuring of school communities, particularly when it comes to this new proposal of Brilliant NYC. I don't love that name, but that's the name that they gave it, where they are doing away with the G&T programs. We do know that we house a citywide gifted and talented program here in our district, as well as a local program at PS 102, Jacques Cartier. So our district was chosen, as well as District 13, to start those family engagement sessions, because we have worked really hard to start engaging our families and to create spaces where we can have productive conversation about what education looks like in District 4. Another forum that we will be hosting is focused on vaccines for children. We know that a lot of parents in our community are going to have questions about the COVID vaccine. Is it safe? Who should they go to? Where could they get their questions answered? How can we support them in that space? So we're organizing with the East Harlem Community Partnership. We had picked a date that's not going to work because it's parent-teacher conference day for elementary school students. So we're going to have to pick another date, but that will be the first or second week of November. And then in December, the CEC would also like to host a forum that addresses some of the concerns that our school communities are having with individuals that are using drugs on school not on school premises, but outside the school premises, but that our families there's still traffic from our families. We have seen, and there's a lot of conversation about the different types of populations in our school communities. And some of our principals have expressed some concerns in terms of, what can we do in order to support our families that are experiencing and seeing different people using drugs close to their schools. And so we want to create a space to engage in those conversations. I have been an addiction researcher for 20 years. That's my actual day job. And so I would love to support a culturally responsive conversation, keeping in mind that drug use and abuse is a mental health disorder, and grounding it in that framework, and not use a deficit or scarcity mindset when engaging in these conversations, and be mindful that some of these folks that could be struggling with addiction are also families in our school communities. So we're trying to figure all that out. Also super excited because our superintendent is building her team. So hopefully soon we'll have a deputy superintendent that's part of our community, and director for early childhood, as we're thinking about how to support all of these changes that are occurring in early childhood with gifted and talented. So lots of exciting things that are happening. Thank you to David for being the DJ at our welcome back a couple weeks ago. We had a beautiful event on Saturday 2 weeks ago. Lots of families participated. Most of our schools were present, and we were able to connect with our community. So we're really excited to continue the work. More than happy to take any questions, and I will post a link to the meeting in the chat, because I don't have access to the DOE Zoom account, so I will be using my account for our meeting.
Also, we had the chancellor on the 25th at the
Yes.
event. She led us in a nice electric slide, a cha-cha slide. So we had a lot of fun that day, and it was good to be back in the community with people. And it was well attended, I would say that as well. And Jeremy will also talk greatly about another event we had with the DA sponsored office as well. Any questions for Caleres? Yes, Carly, please. Anybody else? Yeah, Carly.
Yeah, if anyone wants to go before me, they can. I just haven't seen any hands raised. Okay. Yes, thank you very much for your thorough report. I'm really looking forward to getting some more information about the forums. The office would love to support you in outreach for those forums. You mentioned a couple things. So I have a few questions actually.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, you were talking about the switch from 6 feet to 3 feet, and then you were mentioning doing a needs assessment for remote learning technology in the event that schools do close and remote learning has to be implemented once again. I was confused by the announcement starting on September 27th. So did I miss? I thought that schools were no longer closing down in response to COVID cases. Is that the case, or is it?
So they definitely want to minimize, like I will say verbatim from the this is coming from the Department of Health. They were like, we don't want to quarantine kids. So we're going to do everything possible so that kids are not at home. And so they changed everything. And that means that, you know, the only way that a student will quarantine is if they have been identified as a close contact, which means they have been at most 3 feet from the person that tested positive for COVID, and they have been unmasked. Those are the criteria for a child to be notified, a family to be notified that their child has been a close contact to somebody that has tested positive for COVID.
Notified?
Notified. So for example,
notified.
You will not be notified if your child is in that classroom and your child happened to be 4 feet from that person. You will not be notified. You will not get a letter. They do not tell you. And so that's been a problem because families are hearing through the grapevine, oh, guess what? We had a positive case in our classroom and but they don't get an official letter. And so there's a lot of hearsay and a lot of like, should I quarantine? Should I not quarantine? Should I be testing? Should I not be testing? And that has been the problem. Teachers are also not being notified. So we've heard from teachers that they don't know, and they hear through the grapevine or from a parent like, hey, did you know that my child tested positive? And it's created a lot of miscommunication in our school communities.
I will just say, I understand I understand not wanting to isolate children and taking measures to ensure and to protect our children. I think that's a very interesting measure toward that outcome, but that is all I'll say on that. Okay, so thank you for that. After our presentation tonight, we're going to be discussing our budget requests. A lot of the budget requests that we submitted last year were, our expense requests at least, were related to COVID-19. And so if you happen to be on for that discussion, you'll see that I guess I was unsure about, what we should do, if we should include them in our budget request this year. And one of them was specifically for remote learning devices. But it seems to me that I have gathered that you would probably recommend keeping the request for technology, the requests for technology like iPads, tablets, in the event of, okay.
Absolutely, because I mean, also the turnover in the use of the devices, those devices break. The other thing that we're hearing from schools is the chargers. Those Apple chargers are like horrible. And they do it on purpose. So you have to keep on buying cable after cable. And so that's another need that comes up in our school communities, the chargers. Also, some students that have devices, the first devices that were deployed, they don't have keyboards and they don't have headsets. And that's something that also came up a lot in our communities. They didn't have the accessories. And so if you're in a home and let's say, like, if a parent is trying to be safe and one of their children was exposed to COVID, then they're going to be like, oh, my other child should probably stay home as well. So you end up having families that have multiple children be quarantining at the same time. And if they're engaged in any form of remote instruction, they're going to need to have headsets and different accessories to be able to support these children. The other difficult thing has been if some of these children, the children that are partially quarantining from partial classrooms, they only get what are called office hours. So they're getting asynchronous instruction, and they get office hours with the teacher that could range anywhere from like a 20-minute meeting to maybe more, but the teacher per contract isn't required to like go over the whole day with them. And so my particular question is, that might work for a high school student, But for a 4-year-old who's missed class for 10 days and hasn't had any real contact with a teacher, they're not independent enough to be able to do the work. And so how is it exactly that we're continuing to widen the inequities that exist within the system when having these like partial closures? Because if we had a full classroom closure, then the teacher is like, all right, every day I'm doing synchronous instruction with my whole class, and I'll figure out how to engage with them daily as we're all quarantining. But if we have these partial classroom closures, that presents a problem, particularly for the younger kids. But yeah, that was a long answer to like, yes, support devices.
Okay, thank you. And then, I'm gonna end here, but I just want to say that last year we received an Excel sheet from Dr. Christy De La Cruz of the capital needs as well as the technology needs of all the schools. And I've been in touch with her. I'm looking forward to receiving them again in support of our budget requests. Just flagging that for you in case
Yes.
you get them before I do and I don't receive them. So that's all.
They
Yeah.
generally come out a little later on, Carly. This is a little early for them. We're not all on the same time frame system here. So it's usually it comes out like after the new year for us that we would get that from Dr. Christie.
We might get it a little earlier because we have asked for them as a CEC, like we have flagged that for her, that it's really important.
But see,
So
this
we
is
might-
always the interesting thing, Clarice. We get that list from Dr. Christie or Dr. Strayer previously.
Mhm.
And yet then when we have CEC, this, what is it, School Construction Authority come,
Yeah.
they have a whole different list and prioritize a whole different list. There's some things that overlap,
Yeah.
but then there are things that are not, like, 72 is on the 5-year list now for the bathrooms. Well, it's been on the 10-year list. I mean, it keeps going because of other priorities that knock it out every few years.
Yeah.
So, like the elevator got built at 171 before the bathrooms at 72.
Yeah.
So, but we usually don't get it this early, Carly. I meant to mention that to you. I forgot.
Okay. Thank you. We did get them last year in time for our request though. So
No, but
I'm
see,
not
we
sure,
got them, but those were the year before because of COVID. We got them late from the. See, trust me, we don't usually get them this early.
Yeah, that's
why
fine.
they're not ready yet. Yeah.
Natasha has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Natasha.
I have two questions about the whole like quarantine rule because it's really confusing if I'm being completely honest.
It totally.
It's like, so if 2 kids in a class were to test positive, there's no way you're not going to be that whole class isn't going to be exposed. If it's especially if it's younger kids where they're all up on each other, especially like during lunch, like I've seen it firsthand. We're like an inch from each other. There's no way. There's no social distancing in that lunchroom. So it's I don't get like how the DOE is going to handle it, of the fact that you're going to only quarantine like 3 kids in a class when probably the whole class was exposed. Next thing you know, especially with flu season coming up, like there's going to be multiple stuff like roaming around. So are they like not quarantining people, or are they like, when the letter is sent home saying that a kid was exposed, are they getting quarantined, or is that just saying, oh, you keep your kid home if you want to?
No.
And then I
you
have
can-
like another question.
Right,
Once
but they're
you
not
get
shutting
it
down the
before-
schools. They're not shutting down the classes and the schools. I think in that case that Calaris mentioned, 29, what is that? What percentage? 5% of the school? I mean, that's quite high. That's, right? So they had to shut down, I think there'll be times when it just becomes too overwhelming with the numbers,
Yeah.
right?
So you get notified if you're a close contact. So the 3 feet, I don't know if y'all knew, but the 3 feet distance is nose to nose. So it's nose to nose, kid to kid. So it's like, you're hella close. So
Yeah.
yes. But that is their criteria. If you look at the CDC guideline, the CDC guidelines actually state for other situations, 6 feet distance, but they have exceptions for schools because their feeling is, and I don't know what kind of schools they go to, but their feeling is that if you're in a classroom, you're sitting at a desk, you're being told to stay at your desk, masked. And so they firmly believe that students are staying at their desk, in their rows, in their columns, like not moving. And that a teacher has the ability to be able to identify, because most of this is also left to the teacher to report back, to be able to know and understand who has been 3 feet or less from each other. So there are partial closings. There are some schools that have full classroom closures. And honestly, my conversation with school leaders has been follow your gut. Follow your gut. If you firmly believe that a child has been exposed, like, you're the one that reports back to the situation room. And so, you know, we have to be mindful of our school communities. The situation room also has some really interesting dynamics. So they don't take any new cases past 3:30. They deal with whatever has been reported from the day before or from 9 o'clock to 3:30. And so some school communities are not notified for, 24, 48 hours in terms of what the ultimate decision is. So some school leaders are making these decisions before they have a formal response from the situation room, because they have to keep their community safe. The other thing, and I don't know if you guys can do this, but one of the things that we're trying to do through the CEC is we're trying to use our budget to buy home tests.
We have
because
no
schools
budget.
No. All right, well, cancel that.
There's no budget. We have no budget. You know, board has certain funding for operating costs and certain things that they do within the community, but not in that same capacity
Yeah.
that the CEC is given that luxury to spend the money.
Yeah, well, I will also say that
one more.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah. With the high schools, is it the same rule? Because like high schools, if you think about it, one kid is going to 5 different classes where it's most likely going to be different kids.
Yeah.
Like I said this last month, like a fifth of my school got quarantined on the second day just from one kid going to 5 different classes.
Absolutely.
Like,
so it's the same thing for high schools. The assumption is, however, that in high school students have been vaccinated. So I think the vaccination rate in high school students right now is about 68%. What we don't know from that statistic is whether those are all public school students. My assumption is no. But that's the statistic they're using in order
That's
to make
too
these
high.
policies. And so most of you should be vaccinated. And so in turn, because you're vaccinated, you do not need to quarantine.
Okay.
And the idea is
Alright,
that
thank you.
DOE teachers that are in school are all vaccinated, right? That's the other point. So that you can't enter, I mean, they stopped parents coming in actually before they implemented the September 27th rule.
Yes.
And
did.
parents will stop, what, 2 weeks before or a week before?
No,
Just
parents were stopped the Friday before school
School
started.
right.
Yes. And some schools are adhering to that and basically saying no parents are allowed into the building. Parents that are parent leaders and are vaccinated and are volunteering for the school should be allowed into school communities. But I do know that some of our principals are not letting any parents on school premises.
Yeah, I've seen like some schools are like, just if the parents vaccinated, they're letting them up. But yeah.
Thank you much, Calaris, as always. Again, I would advise everybody to please try to get on tomorrow for the CEC. Usually we get a condensed report from the superintendent, but it will probably be much more thorough and full tomorrow. And as Calaris said, there's a lot of good things with resolutions moving forward that impact our community and that we should also look to adopt. We've also supported a lot last year and working together. So again, thank you, Calaris. Thank you, CEC4. Just going in order, CEC5 is not here, right, Ms. Williams? I know she pimed in last time. If not, we continue to move on. We'll move to Jeremy, and Jeremy, as a longstanding announcement in this, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Jeremy Lockett here from the Community Partnership Unit at the Manhattan DA's office. I just want to say thank you again, David. I know he was representing CB11 Youth and Education as well as Children's Aid. I thought it was an amazing event. So on October 2nd at White Park, we were able to, from 9 a.m. to about 5 o'clock, close down 106th Street. It did create definitely some issues for some people that wanted to use that street, but we filled it up with many resource tables, anywhere from a bunch of organizations that many of you know, whether it was Exodus, Union Settlement, really held it down for us. Warm cases. We had just about, I think, 14 or so community resources out on that street. And then when you entered the park, right from there, we had a DJ going. I honestly think he was phenomenal. Great music going, all like the hits. There was bucket drumming for the kids. There was performers. There was spoken word. There was breakdancing. And before I forget, I know you mentioned the COVID testing. We managed to get a COVID truck, and I do have a number for someone if anyone does want that at a location or event. It was, I believe they go by Dr. Thornton. They showed up. I think they served the community for at least 4 hours or so. And they've been located on 125th in Lexington, 125th and Malcolm X, I think for the past week or so that I've seen them now. But anyways, they are great. But it was a great time. So I could kind of go off about that. And I don't know if you want to share your vantage point, David, or anyone else, but it was an event as well that, we put together, in my opinion, too quickly. It was phenomenal, but I wanted to be able to spread the word to all the schools in the area. So I think I know next time what we need to do. We need more time. We are actually planning one right now for the Lower East Side, specific to hate crimes that have gone on in that community. And one thing I do want to I remember the MAP team at Wagner put on an event in response to hate crimes. I think it was in August. And they had some phenomenal performances, and I'm actually trying to get their contact. I don't know if Ava Chan from CB11 would be able to help me, but I'm gonna reach out to her. But that, yeah, I'll keep you posted. I know that's the Lower East Side. So anyways, I'm available. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month as well. We are doing presentations this month. We are trying to reach out and get things going. I'm trying to think. We have one right now related with Assembly Member Robert Rodriguez is putting on a forum for elder abuse, actually, and we're going to be doing sort of that in regards to domestic violence and elder abuse. I can put some information about that, but I'm here and available, and I'm always just available to just brainstorm. So I just want to thank everyone again for having me on this call, but I'll be available, and any questions. And again, David, please share your vantage point. I had a great time.
No, I had a great time as well. And I tell you, there was a feeling of real community spirit and community effort to collaborate and just support. Boys Club was setting up tents for everybody and had tents. And I remember I didn't have a tent with me. And I said, oh, I forgot. And I kept moving my table into the shade as the sun was going, and somebody said, hey, come share our tent, right? And I had one table with Children's Aid on half of it and Community Board 11, but I think it was really good. And I have to say, when we have Union Settlement and a few other places have their youth present that a part of their programs and dance programs, man, there's this one young man that did his thing with the break dance and the hat. Man, he ain't dropped that hat. I mean, he was throwing the hat up in the air with his foot, catching it on his head. And, those are things that sometimes get hidden and lost, and it is so important to make sure that we show out there. And I know I've lost a dance teacher that we had pre-COVID and haven't been able to get one back. And it's such an enrichment loss. And then my step person, he went back to Houston during the COVID. Mm-hmm. And these were things that are important that are hooks for kids. And we have to remember sometimes that kids need so many different avenues, because you never know what's going to be that thing that sticks with them. And it may even just be the avenue to get to the next thing, to school or whatever. But the healing event was really nice. It was really community fed. It was really nice to have some of our young heroes that work in this work that were community kids and growing up and raising their own families in East Harlem. Michael Parker for being, for instance.
Yeah, he was the MC for the day, and you're right. Yeah. There were some phenomenal people that pulled up. I will say again, we did miss some people, and you highlighted that there are people that obviously couldn't be there. We had some speakers and they spoke on, different losses in the past couple of years it's gone on, and even in the longer past. But I know that I hope that our office is willing to put more events on it and do some other things and collaborate. So yeah, I just look forward to that.
I have to say, I know Cy Vance is on his way, he's there. But even like with the hub grant that was extended and amended for another year, these are programs that are working, that are talking about bringing us together, right, to do these kind of events. Because when you talk about the hub, you're talking about SAVE, you're talking about all these other entities that are also part of the work that we do, and again, I think it's nice that we're getting back to doing things in the community. And I remember Lou Zuckman saying about a year ago, when they started doing these events back in the community, attendance was low still. People, so, we're still trying to come out of COVID, right? And this has been a lot of where we are. And I tell you, I'm in a school, and I'll deny it, even though it's taped. Kids is all up on one another. Now they're wearing masks, right? And kids are doing good wearing the mask, but they are interacting like kids in school. And now that you put 500-600 kids back in the building, how many kids can you really fit in the class, right?
Yeah.
So,
I will say on that note, you're making me think about, everything that's kind of opening again. We need to emphasize, I think, the community spaces and reopen bigger spaces. I know that there are a couple more locations for SNL that have expanded in East Harlem, as well as Central. I believe there's what they call, not what is called, but it's non-contact boxing that's been added, not just, basketball, really pushing it, music, art, all of it. So I just, again, appreciate you saying that, because it needs to happen right now. But there's a lot of
and I'll say this too, after I finished that event, Jeremy, I walked up to the East Harlem Center, and the open street was there at 101st Street. And the entire half of that area was all covered like with a mural with chalk. And I think these are the kind of things that are so important, is the community spirit. And even there, I'm sitting there talking outside with Leroy Adino, actually, who's a member of this committee, who lives on that block. And this woman reached out and said, are you David? And she knew me from Frederick Douglass and working 30 years ago as a kid. It took me a minute to focus. I remembered her brother, not necessarily her, but, again, community is so important at this time, because there's so many things that could separate us. And I think, how do we forge these things? So, the art of healing, I think what I missed from it, Jeremy, in all fairness, was the march to that, because that had been a piece of it where we came through different pieces. So,
that was something that we definitely, so the march did go on a couple months ago, and, that was pulled together, but you're right. We need to plan these things together, get more attention from the community. I loved it. It's Go So Save and Councilwoman Daniela. They're able to really, really help us pull that off in years past. And yeah. I know Angela's got her hand raised, and definitely want to hear from you. How you doing?
Good, Angela.
Okay, so I was just listening to what you had said. What I've noticed in East Harlem is that we only seem to utilize spaces in places that are the big nights of development. So the rest of us that live in the community that may not live in the nights of development feels left out. But has outreach ever been done at the other buildings? As for example, David and I had a presentation in Lakeview. We have a beautiful community room. And my thought processes was, yes, we need children all over the place. The children all have different desires. Why not reach out to the private buildings that may have a communal space and see if we can get them to say, all right, we'd like to teach a dance class in this spot for 30 kids on a weekly basis, and then utilize that space. That will also help to unite the neighborhood so that people that don't live in NYCHA don't feel like they're left out. During COVID, food distribution, they only seem to be concerned with people that lived in the NYCHA developments. It's as if the rest of us did not exist. And I live in a HUD building, and we weren't on the list. So I was just thinking that maybe some outreach to the resident associations and or building managements to see if they'd be willing. Because if we keep the kids off the street, everybody's property is going to be better off. Everybody's going to be happier if they're doing something that's productive. So I think we need to begin to really think more holistically and start including the spaces and places that we didn't think of. And that includes the condos and the co-ops around here. They are still in this community. They have children. It'll be good for interaction. If the police department can utilize those spaces when they do build the blocks, then why can't we create youth programs? Each program, not every place will have basketball. The boxing classes, we could have, my brain is not working, but like choral speaking, to teach people what is that? I can't think of what the activity
you
is.
know what, Angela,
Debate teams.
Angela, it
Kids that
circles
don't-
back to the piece about funding and where we need to advocate. Because even if we got spaces, right, not necessarily they're always free. And I used to run a community center where I opened the gym for everybody to come in.
Yes, but my building is not free, but we
No.
utilized it for free
No, I know
because
that.
you can convince management if it's for the better. That's about bringing the community in. People might have to make a small sacrifice. We're talking about doing things in like after school hours. I'm not even talking about weekends. I'm talking after school hours where these rooms are just sitting around empty. Why not take a program? SCAN has a program. Children's Aid has a program. Okay, I'm gonna take the dance program and put it in this place. And then people can come to that place. I'm gonna take this program and I think that these owners of the buildings, first off, it's a feather in their cap. Two, they probably can write it off some kind of way on taxes. So let's all be real about this. It's still money flow. That's what I had to say. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Angela. It gets a lot more complicated too, because we do have to look at how, again, once you bring in kids and you say like SCAN or Children's Aid, then you involve in the DYCD and DOH, because we're taking kids as part of these programs that when we take them to regular places, they do have to meet these other standards. So again, it's not as just always as simple. What we did, Angela, was
Yes,
again,
but
a
if we
wonderful
don't,
thing.
if we don't start a conversation with the people that have the spaces, how do we know what they're willing to actually do? How much are they willing to actually do?
And we need very persuasive people like you leading the charge with those management companies to get that accomplished.
Put my hand down right now.
You put your hand down. So
No,
Jeremy, also you reached out last week, and again, I'm sorry, but I would definitely like to connect maybe tomorrow or Thursday about doing some stuff at the school at Lexington with some
Sounds
of
good.
our middle school kids, most definitely.
Sounds good to me.
Do we have any other questions? Thanks for the great spirit, everybody, and moving things along. No, without that said, I do want to just make a quick announcement as it relates to Children's Aid Society and the East Harlem Center rebuild. There is a community advisory meeting scheduled for this Thursday at 6 o'clock. They are also looking for new board members to sit on the advisory board. They meet quarterly. It's more informational and meeting. We are actually having Mount Sinai at the meeting this Thursday. If anybody is interested, let me know. I'll make sure that you have the link to attend. If anybody's interested in being a board member, I do have the link to fill out the application. Rev, I did send it to you. I know I forgot. I forgot. But it's in your inbox right at the moment. So you do have it now. Natasha, did I send it to you, or you already had it from your mom, I think you told me?
Yeah, I filled it out. I think my dad sent it in.
Okay, good. And Rev, I had it in the outbox, but I didn't hit the send, so I've been sitting there.
I
That's
forgive
fine.
you. I forgive
Thank you, Rev. I know, I'm trying to add something else to Rev's plate. So again, where we are very quickly, the inside of the church, which is part of the project for the East Harlem rebuild, it's pretty much gutted. It's just the shell. The developer is coming, I believe, tomorrow to look at the Children's Aid space, to begin to look at how we would take down that building and what things have already been done in terms of lead abatement and and those things. So it seems like it's finally moving forward, and happy to hear what happens on Thursday. I'm looking forward to the update. I do have to give an update on the programming that we're functioning, and I'll give that at that time. If there are any questions, Angela, you have your hand raised, or was that raised before? I'm sorry. You're
Oh,
muted.
that's
Angela.
new, because you're making announcements. So I did want to make an announcement, if that's okay. I would do it here, right?
Yeah, I mean, these are the basic informational updates, and Children's Aid was one of them in and outstanding issues. But if you have something you want to announce, please do right now. And then
So, yes,
after that one, yeah.
In partnership with DOH, and the Safe Sleep Program, the East Harlem Community Partnership is hosting a Safe Sleep Resource Fair. We will have Safe Sleep. The Nurse Family Partnership will be there. There'll be people to tell you about becoming a mother provider or finding a mother provider for your child. We'll have a child care program, and we will be giving away. We're raffling off car seats, and there'll be all kinds of baby giveaways. We are looking for women to attend with young babies. The whole fair is centered around 0 to 5.
When is this,
October
Angela?
25th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the garden at Union Settlement. I will make sure as soon as the flyer that tells the overall program will be created. Hopefully I'll have it by tomorrow to send out. We have a flyer because it was sent out on the, I guess with ACS, with the Safe Sleep Program, because this is Safe Sleep Month. And so we're doing this in partnership. We want to make sure that we get as many new mothers to come, because there will be giveaways that they need. And right now I'm waiting for confirmation from the Baby Cafe with the Department of Health, what they will be able to participate. But there will be pack and plays. There will be a pack and play. There will be car seats. There will be baby bags and bottles and all kinds of things. And I really would like everybody to come in. I will send Carly the flyer. Please post it. And then something else and tomorrow, this is just a sidebar. Well, this is youth and education. Tomorrow there's a youth symposium, and I can put the link in the chat. So from sitting on the board, but I have a program. You met Cappy, Dr. Cappy Collins, and the cyclopedia class. Well, 2 of his students that from the summers are speaking at a youth symposium upstate. I have to, hold on. It's the Youth Symposium on Environmental Justice. 2 of his students will be presenting, and he just wants them to feel supported in the environment. And so he asked me to try to, ask people to come. So I will drop the link. That's the link in the chat. If anybody is interested in attending, you have to register, but it's at 4 o'clock tomorrow. And I think we should give these children, they are our future, and these children are advocating for environmental justice.
Thank you, Angela. Hi, Patricia. You have your hand raised. So are you going to do the Harlem Careers, or are you going to do something separate? Just so I.
Something separate. We're gonna
Okay.
let Angela talk tonight about Harlem Careers.
Go ahead, Patricia, please.
My organization, Harlem Yes, we've partnered with the Roll Up Your Sleeve campaign. We'll be out at street fairs and different events talking about the importance of getting vaccinated in the East Harlem community. So what I'd like to say is, if you're having any type of an event, please let me know so that my team and I can come out and try to get people to get vaccinated. We never ask, are you vaccinated? but we want to make sure that people, know how to get vaccinated if they're ready to.
Very good.
Okay. I'll put my email
Information.
in the chat. Yes, so if you have any events coming up, we'd love to come out and hand out literature and be a part of that event to get our community vaccinated against this thing.
Thank you, Patricia. One of the things might be good as well is to, just at the end of the day of school dismissals, just handing out some of the flyers at schools, because you hit up a lot of parents. Just a
Well, that's
thought.
one of the things that my team and I, that we've been discussing, is having someone at the schools at 2:30 giving out information to the parents as they pick up their kids. So yes, thank you for that. And we appreciate any suggestions, because our slogan is I need you, you need me, and together we can beat this thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's kind of our theme today, coming together, trying to bring the best interest for our community. And again, as we will move to Angela back with Harlem Careers, but again, as we move forward, I think, as our presentation goes, we want to make sure that we're always looking at what's best for the community. And there's so many different assets and there's so many different needs. And how do we make those assets meet those needs so that we maximize what our community needs here in East Harlem? Angela, please, with Harlem Careers.
So Harlem Careers is moving along. It's the little engine that could. What's been really good is that people are continually posting, at least as by my knowledge, on the Facebook website. Ava kind of looks at the Instagram. I'm not Instagram savvy, but there's a lot of good postings that I'm seeing from other people. So what we'd like is for anyone can join the group and you can post to the site. We prefer information more specific to you, if that's possible, but job listings and postings are welcome too. Any programs that's doing any type of tech training that's going to be beneficial to children and families, because we want to uplift the whole community. So please follow us on Instagram, check us out on Facebook, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Angela. That was quick. And I know we used to spread it out with Eva before when she was part of this committee, but she's leading a charge in human services, I believe, right now. So we do have our presentation, right, Carly? That's what's next on the agenda. I hate when I can't hold an agenda.
Yes, that's next.
So during our last meeting with Parks, again, some things overlap in our committees and our communities. And we thought it was really important to make sure that this new project that they're proposing, a golfing range or driving range, right? And that will be coming to or is coming to Randall's Island. And the opportunities that may be here for youth, may be here for job opportunities in the construction as well. These things all overlap so many of our committees, and yet we all don't sit on all these committees. And we thought it was very important that we get a little chime in from the youth and education as well as economic development about this particular project and how we can collaboratively make it a win-win for East Harlem. I do believe we have the next Tiger Woods laying around in one of these buildings in NYCHA or, facilities. And if you just gave them the opportunity, you'd be surprised at what kids give you in return. And again, in my work with youth, I'll just say this, and this, I love quotes, but I use this quote: show interest in that child when you want nothing from them, and you'll be surprised at what you get in return. And I would say, put a club in that kid's hand and understand that this is not a weapon in our community, but an avenue to make money, an avenue to do something that somebody else couldn't do, as we so learned with Tiger. And, I don't know if any of y'all saw, but I saw this special they did on Tiger Over series on one of the cable channels. And, just the devotion of a young kid at 3 years old, given an opportunity to do something, and how a commitment to something can make that person, reach their potential that none of us thought we would have. I lived my dream job. I did what I wanted to do as a kid, become a community center director. And, when you're young and you have a dream and you're able to fulfill it, that's a very meaningful thing and carries with you to life. And this is why I want to make sure that other kids have those same opportunities that I had, or maybe even have more opportunities than I had. I thought I was going to play basketball, but I didn't grow. I was a big kid, right? So we don't know what challenges may deter us towards something new. But I don't want to hold Paul up and Ricardo. I want you to run through your thing like we didn't hear anything, so that this committee looks at it from the vision and the eyes about how this affects youth in the community as well as going forward. So thank you both, and I'll be quiet.
No, thank you for your words, David. And thank you for inviting us to your committee. We're pleased to have an opportunity to present. And, what you said rings super true. Here I am, I just turned 51 yesterday. And I've been with American Golf Corporation, which is an affiliate of Drive Shack, the developer of the Randall's Island Center, for 26 years. I've actually been in the golf business since I quit my paper route. And I was very, very fortunate to have some golf professionals allow me to work in the pro shop, to give me some golf instruction. And while my dream job would have been being on tour, playing against Tiger Woods and other folks, my second dream job was to be in the golf business forever. And I was very, very fortunate to do that. And it's a business that you can really get, well, it's a business and a game that you can really get hooked on. And I do hope, as you said, that this is something that happens for the CB11 community and a number of communities, because there are so many opportunities in golf, even if you're not the best player in the world, there's a lot of other things that can be done. So it opens up a lot of avenues for, business meetings, social gatherings, et cetera. So that's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do here, is we're bringing golf back to Randall's Island. It hasn't been there for 3 years. Rick has the really fun job because he's so creative, and he'll take us through the design and sort of what we're replacing, which is, very exciting. We do need to have a wonderful golf and recreational experience on Randall's Island, and I think it will be a wonderful addition to the community. So with that, I will turn it over to Rick to go through the design and the site plan, et cetera. And then I'll come back at the end and say a few words, and we'll have some discussion as well. So looking forward to it. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you, Paul. And thank you everyone for inviting us. I'm very excited. I won't give you my life history because I think it'll take too long. I was raised in New York, played a lot of competitive sports, came to Randall's Island when it was a mess, and now have had the privilege as an architect. And David, I'm saying this because of what you said about your basketball career. I think those who can't become architects of sports facilities, which is what I became. Randall's Island has been a incredible place for us in terms of the opportunities we've been given to improve the island and design these first-rate sports facilities in your backyard. So Carly, could you go to the next slide, please? Some of you know, I think many of you know of the work we've done on the island. We've been involved for 20 years. We were hired by RIPA many years ago to help them with the redevelopment of the island. And these are some of the buildings these are the buildings we've designed. We did the comfort stations, of which 3 are built, the tennis center for sport time, We brought power to the northern part of the island with an electrical substation, which is no small feat. It's not a high-profile building, very important. And then, of course, Icon Stadium, which is the outdoor municipal track and field stadium where Usain Bolt broke the world record for the first time. So anyway, we've kind of clung to all these great achievements through our work on the island. Next, please. And so the site is, as David mentioned, is where the current golf center is. It's about a 16-acre site, and it's flanked on the north and east side by the RFK Bridge. It's north of Icon Stadium, and it's in the part of the park that's called the Harlem River Fields. So next, please. These are just, I'll show you just a few photos for those of you who haven't been there. It's been closed for a few years. It's in poor shape right now. And quite frankly, the facility is quite a bare bones facility that's been there for several decades. The upper photograph is a photo of a two-tier driving range that's there. It has about 80 stalls, very tight, nothing fancy, and it's quite in dilapidated condition. One thing you do see is that there's some nice trees that are on the site, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. The bottom image is looking east from the fairway towards the driving range building. And I think what's notable is not the building itself, but these beautiful mature trees. And one of the wonderful things about the site is that it is encircled by these very large mature trees that we intend to keep and take good care of. Next, please. So the upper photo is a view looking south to the Harlem River and towards Parkland from the upper tier of the building. And then the lower photograph is a view looking east, directly east. And you can see the towers of the RFK Bridge in the distance. Next, please. This is the site plan. We've been developing it, so it's a little bit changed, but really the gist of it has not changed from day one. And just sort of to tell you a few of the major moves that we did. If you were to compare the current location of the building, of the driving range building with what we're proposing, the current building is about 100 yards to the east. And so what we've done is we've moved it to the west. And what that's allowed us to do is discover and bring back a very large portion of the site, about half of it, into parkland. And so what you see on the right-hand side is currently inaccessible. Most of it is paved. It is part of the licensed premises for the golf center, but the plan shows that this area will become parkland. It will remove the fencing. You'll be able to, anyone will be able to walk into this area and enjoy this renewed parkland. Then you see the building. The building's large. It's much larger than what we have now, than what's there now. It's about a 70,000 square foot building with all these amenities, and really Paul could tell you much more about how the game of golf is played and learned here and enjoyed. But there's very little relationship to what's there now. And then of course there's the fairway on the right side. Next, please. The building, I'll talk quickly about the building. It's a 3-story building. It's about 45 feet in height, in total height. It's divided into 4 components. And the central component is the entrance. It's a public area. Anyone can come in. There's food service on the ground floor, open to anyone, any park goer. Public bathrooms that you can see sort of on the right side of the lobby. Access to all 3 levels. And on the left side, in that sort of, with that circle and that sort of square shape are 2 miniature golf courses that are enclosed. On the right side, all back of house, so offices, loading, mechanical rooms, things like that. And that pretty much happens throughout the building. The miniature golf is only one story, so on the second floor, you see the roof, and it's got this kind of exciting, to me, sculptural form. Lobbies and lounges and access in the middle, and then a kitchen, a full-service kitchen for the facility on the right side. The third floor, again, open space, lobbies, and a terrace that looks out over the park on the right side. The main component, which I've left out, is actually the fourth component, are the stalls that face west. There are 32 on each floor, on each level, for a total of 96. Currently, there are 80. So it's funny. I mean, it's a much larger building, but the increase in the number of stalls is not great. It's just the quality is really night and day. So next, please. This is a in-progress view of the facade. The upper drawing is what you would see when you would coming in from the east, which is the access point underneath the north-south span of the RFK Bridge. On the left side is the miniature golf enclosure. In the middle, in this sort of very glassy, we're trying to make this very, very open, would be the lobby and a 2-story space. And we're designing it so you can see through and see activity happening not only in the space itself and make it very inviting, but also beyond on the tiers themselves, where people are swinging golf clubs. The right side is fairly blank. It faces the bridge, and that's all back of house. On the west facade, you can see the 3 tiers of the 96 stalls of driving range. So it's pretty much form follows function in on that facade. Next, please. And then these are just some sort of brief views. This is what you would see as you're entering from the east, as you come in from underneath the bridge. You see the miniature golf, this sort of sculptural shape. This very glassy center would be there. And then, beyond that, these sort of curvy, meshy fences, or what you sort of see now. I mean, right now, there are fences for the current golf course, golf range that are very poor shape. They'll be replaced with something newer and better. Next, please. And then this is the view from sort of south, looking sort of southeast. And so you see the 3 tiers, you see the driving range and the fairway where the balls are hit. But most importantly, I think, is that bicyclists and the people walking, because one thing I neglected to say is that we are opening up that whole half along the eastern part of the site, open to anyone and everyone. And we expect that that'll become sort of a cross link from people coming from the pedestrian and bike path, from the RFK Bridge, from 125th Street. Right now, if any of you have ever done that, you land and you're in no man's land, because it's this street that feeds the MTA garage, and it's quite awful. So you'll be able to come right onto the site. It'll be again a night and day situation for the average park goer. So next, please. And then I think this is my last visual slide. I'll talk very briefly about the environmental strategies for the building. Yes, we are having energy efficient equipment, water saving technology, and all of that. Absolutely. But there are 2 things that I think are important for this, like very, very important. And we want to sort of showcase them, and we feel that they'll be part of the identity of the building, part of the character. And that's solar panels. We're planning to put a large amount solar panels for energy generation. I mean, this is 2021 where, it's what we've gone through is just kind of head spinning in the last few years and even few months in terms of the climate change, and also stormwater. We are developing a comprehensive stormwater plan to capture stormwater on the site. This is a much larger building than what's there, as I mentioned, but our plan will not increase one drop the amount of stormwater that goes into the existing system. And we're doing this through a series of rain gardens and porous surfaces to capture rainwater on site. Next, please. And then just talking sort of in broad sweeps about the timeline, we've gone to the Public Design Commission. We've met with them for several months. We've gotten a great deal of feedback. We're far from done with them. We're planning to go back in November. We wanted to meet with you first and sort of leave this chunk of time to engage and have conversations with the community board. So that follows next. We'll go back to them. It says October, but it's actually November. I apologize. We'll go back to them in November and sort of hopefully come out intact in April and with approval from them. We will also be working with the Parks Department, obviously, as public parkland, early next year for their plan review. And then we plan to go to the building department, and then becomes quite real in March of next year. Have construction start in June and construction complete by the end of December 2023, and the facility open for the community and other people in New York City. So, Paul, it's all yours.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Rick. It's on mute there. So just to give it to play or expand upon what Rick was explaining in terms of the programming. So what Drive Shack is, it's an affordable, technology enabled, really a next generation driving range, that each of the stalls have interactive golf games for all ages and all skill levels. So you could be an avid golfer and go out there and use our technology to track your ball flight, your ball spin, your ball speed, distance it traveled, and those types of things. Or you can play things like Monster Hunt Challenge with the whole family. You also have an opportunity to virtually play a number of golf courses across the country. You're still hitting each of your shots, but it'll score for you, and the screen will react to how you hit the ball, so that if you are trying to play a quick round of golf, and you could do it in under an hour, where it could take you 4 or 5 hours at a golf course, you have that opportunity. So the beauty of what we offer, the equipment, the golf clubs, all the games I just talked about, and we're constantly creating new ones. That's all included in the golf bay rental price. The golf bay, unlike the prior facility that only could have one person hitting at a time, or one person using at a time, I should say, our bays can hold up to 6 people at one time. And so the bay rental price is a flat price, and you can bring 5 of your friends, 5 of your family members, and utilize unlimited golf balls while you're in there playing. And it's usually a 1-hour bay rental. The typical rental price is right now is going about $30 to $55 per hour, depending upon the day and the time of day, which that comes out to about $5 to $8 per person. And as I mentioned, that's unlimited golf balls while you're in the stall, where the range that was there previously and other ranges nearby, you get 1 bucket of balls, it's $15, and it's going to have 100 or less golf balls in it. So it's an opportunity to bring a lot of folks out and play, unlimited golf with the amount of time you're able to spend out there. As Rick mentioned, the restaurant is open to the public. We will have free Wi-Fi. Our hours of operation are 9 a.m. to midnight. It's essentially we close when the park closes. And so it's a really exciting opportunity to kind of take this next generation of recreational entertainment driving ranges, which are becoming just a really popular way for people to experience golf, but really to get exposed to golf. Golf had become, one, so time consuming, two, extremely difficult to play, that we were sort of losing the younger generation in golf. So we were trying to come up with ways to get folks to get exposed to it, and to really fall in love with the game as we hope. Because I don't know if you all realize this, but American Golf, which is an affiliate of Drive Shacks, we've been running golf courses in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island since 1983 on behalf of the City Parks Department. So our DNA is traditional golf, but we're also not stodgy enough to know that we need to be innovative, because we want to be able to figure out ways to help grow the game. And we have 4 of these facilities open, and we're seeing a whole group of folks come out and play golf that you wouldn't normally have at our traditional golf property. So it's been really exciting, and we're really looking forward to bringing this facility to Randall's Island. So any questions, by the way, before I continue? Any questions on the design, or questions on just sort of the concept itself?
I'll just add that at the Parks meeting, I was on the phone because I wasn't at home at a computer. It was much nicer to see the pictures and the renderings of what's to come. So I think it looks really great, Ricardo and Paul.
Great, thank you for that feedback, and I'm glad you had the opportunity to see them all. You're right, on a phone it probably doesn't do it as much justice. A big part of what we do at American Golf is we do work to promote the game of golf. Our facilities in the boroughs host numerous high school teams. We have junior programs. There's a program that our ambassadors host where kids can come out and play after school for $1. They can play for $1, and they get tips from our ambassadors. Now, while those ambassadors may not be certified PGA professional instructors, they're still the kids are still getting the mentoring and the experience of folks who have been around the game of golf a long time. But we're also getting folks to get exposed to golf and get on course. We have a lot more, potentially more opportunity here with Drive Shack, because it is a driving range. Going from a driving range to a golf course, it does take a more skill level to go to the golf course. But here, again, folks who may not have played golf before, or are just starting out, and perhaps just don't have the talent level, they can really come out and get exposed and have a good time here. So again, we would look to partner with high school golf teams to provide free weekday bay play for practice and instruction, as we do it in the boroughs. We'd be looking to do that. Here, we've already been in talks with RIPA to host their kids' summer camps, providing free weekday use of the Drive Shack facilities. And the goal here is we're adding another great recreational option to the island. So our partnerships with RIPA and our partnerships with parks that are go back many years, we're looking to bring those here to Drive Shack, and expand upon them in ways that we can expose more people, because as we talked about earlier, golf's a lifelong recreational and athletic activity. I mean, this is something you can do when you're, super flexible in your teens and 20s until you're 80 or 90 and even longer. So it's a wonderful game in that manner. We at our existing drive shacks, we do come up with discounted programming for various nonprofit and charitable groups. We do Fairways for Warriors, helping wounded veterans, Inspiration Golf for programs for people with disabilities. But there's a number of other opportunities that we may have, and partnering with local nonprofits to host events is something we look to. As Rick said, it's a big facility, and we're open from 9 to midnight. There will be times during the week and in particular during school hours or shortly just after school closes, where we have an opportunity to use the additional space that we have to work with other groups to bring kids out, or to perhaps I know, Angela, you mentioned about the communal space events. This may not be exactly convenient for everybody, but things like that we could look at doing out here. Maybe a community day, community board day, or the like. There will be instruction on site. Our instructors typically are independent contractors. I know they were at the prior driving range. So there will be opportunity for individual lessons, group lessons, and potentially, and I'm here at the right committee because we're with the Youth and Education Committee, and you can help me to better understand how we might be able to do things, perhaps with some gym classes, perhaps during the school year, to partner with school phys ed classes to perhaps have a field trip or bi-weekly, bi-monthly type opportunities to help to have the schools help us get folks exposed to golf, exposed to Drive Shack, and hopefully make them lifelong golfers. Carly, if you could click to the, oh, sorry.
No. I wasn't sure if you were finished, Paul. I was going to open it up. I see.
No,
Reverend,
I do have one more here.
Sure.
This facility is a large facility. It takes a lot of people to operate. We're expecting that we will create 350 permanent jobs here in a wide variety of positions, from first job type opportunities, dishwasher, prep cook, or even the folks that pick up the driving range, which was a job I had as soon as I quit my paper. I was the guy that drove that little cart around with the cage over it, picking up the balls. There will be those jobs. So a lot of opportunities for teens, to get an entry-level position. And then, as you can see here, the opportunity to work all the way up through our system. We have great training programs into management positions. And there are a number of management positions culminating with the general manager position here. So we will definitely look to partner with the community board to post the jobs, work on recruitment opportunities, and promote summer youth employment opportunities. And I don't know, Angela, you mentioned it on the Harlem Careers. Is this the type of thing that we could post on the Harlem Careers site?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Because children, teens can get these jobs, college students can get these jobs, parents can get these jobs. So anything that's going to uplift the community, absolutely. So obviously you heard that, David, I needed to talk to some other people. So I guess I better start talking to you. We'll start with you.
Sure.
Your contact information is here.
I will email it to you.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
I'll put my email in the chat.
Great.
Reverend Yolanda Brown, please.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a couple of questions regarding the business model, because I'm trying to see exactly where things lay, because we have a number of collaborations. Now we have the American Golf and we have Drive Shack. Can you tell me what type of partnership is Drive Shack a franchise? How is that working?
Great question. I should have been clear on that. I appreciate you asking that. So American Golf has been in business for over 50 years. Back in 2013, we were purchased by Drive Shack. And so at the time, Drive Shack was a investment company. And what happened to me, they were actually called Newcastle Investment Corporation. And right after they bought us, and the plan was there all along, was to build upon American Golf's traditional golf experience and get into more innovative, technology-based, attractive, recreational type golf. And so Newcastle actually changed its name to Drive Shack shortly after buying American Golf. And we're combined. We are sister companies. We work closely together. We share executives. So the Drive Shack is the name of our parent company, but we have 3 brands underneath that. We have American Golf, which is a traditional golf brand. We have Drive Shack, which is the multi-level driving ranges. As I mentioned, we have 4 open and operating today. And then we also have a brand called The Puttery, which is an indoor miniature golf concept, elevated indoor golf concept. And so that makes up, all 3 of those brands make up Drive Shack. We're one and the same.
Okay, great. And the reason why I ask, I'm just trying to see how deep the pockets are really going to go, especially when it relates to the community benefit agreement. Now, in your presentation, you do have a page that's been highlighted some bullet points on some of the outreach that's hoped to be taking place within the community. But Drive Shack is a publicly traded company, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and as a publicly traded company, they're in position to do more than what's being highlighted within the community outreach area of your presentation, correct?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yes, I would say yes, they are.
Okay, so what can we do as a community representing East Harlem to have maybe conversation to craft a benefit agreement that reflects, number one, the position of Drive Shack and also the needs of our community, which Randall's Island is a part of the community itself?
So I'm not sure on the community benefit agreement. I think what we need to do is we need to work, collaboratively. As we're about 2.5 years out from opening, but we need to work collaboratively on what groups would be interested in being a part of enjoying Drive Shack. And particularly for us, we are focused with schools and school golf teams. And I realize in the elementary schools and intermediate schools, or middle schools, I should say, they may not have a golf team, but that's one area where I think we could work together with some phys ed programs.
Paul, I'm glad you said that. Sorry, Rev, just I want to kind of interject, because I was a little critical in the Parks meeting about certain things, about the benefits to our children. And even today, like when I heard you say high school golf teams, there is no high school in East Harlem that has golf teams. So you're not referring to us. And often it's the private schools, the Daltons, the Columbia Preps that have the golf teams, not the public schools. And it's not that we don't want this opportunity, but I like what you just said about how do we get it to the schools? How do we expose it? And that's the part I think, in addition to CBOs, is how do we involve, because, high schools are citywide schools. Mm-hmm. High schools are not necessarily, other than Esperanza, and maybe that's where we could start, which is a high school in this community that's a district high school as opposed to a citywide, and it's under the superintendent, may be a place to start, as well as in middle school, so that we kind of force the kids into, I'm hoping to hear from Russell, because like I said, also, this is where we get caught up. you have a need to get a letter of support. So they are asking for a letter of support. But as Rev's saying is, when can we sit down and draft what this would really look like? And we don't necessarily have the time within your time frame to do what we would need in our time frame to say, yeah. And that's where we get caught up. And then that's where the job piece and the economic, and that's why it's important. And I don't want to be critical, because when we're not necessarily voting as an individual committee, so I inform the board, we're going back in executive with the chairs and going to represent what this committee, what Parks and Economic Development feel what should go forward. And if there are real things that we would want to say, this is what we want in this, not only to present to Paul and Ricardo, but also to present to executive. So when they vote on the 22nd with this at their meeting, I believe it's the 22nd, they have the proper information. And I know I'm split between what are the deliverables that we will actually get, but what a great opportunity for our community to expose. And again, my life in working with youth has always been to expose them to something that they may not have the opportunity to, because that may be their thing. You know, it's great to hear. I mean, I love DJing. I got music. My background in the beginning was music. You know, this is where we are with these things. And we want to make sure that the kid that is that potential Tiger Wood gets an opportunity to hold that golf club and swing it on Randall's Island as the first opportunity to say, hey, I love this. This is what I want. And not even to be a professional, as a pastime, right? As an opportunity and to enjoy something, you know, so.
Mhm.
And my question is purpose, because I'm going somewhere with this. So given your 2 years in and given the target date of 2023, is there a time where there could be an advisory board that will have a number of East Harlem community stakeholders? Because oftentimes we come into situations we can't know everything. So I understand that we don't know the nuances or the ins and outs. However, but once we come into contact with other stakeholders, we're learning along the way. So not to change the date because the train is already out the gate, right? However, there could be instituted an advisory group, if you will, that will help to shape and inform this. So not only with a letter of support, but we actually take ownership in what's happening within the community, and also educate and inform the powers that be what is happening in the community, how we can proceed and move about in the community. A golf team, maybe that's something that Drive Shack, can begin to implement. And so that's why a community benefit agreement is so important to craft, and it requires to be some type of advisory from the community level. So that's where I'm going with this. And that's why my line of questioning started the way it did, because I wanted to get it to the place where we're open to having an advisory committee where East Harlem community stakeholders are part of that conversation to help inform the community benefit agreement.
And I'll just add, that's a two-way collaborative. It's not, we just want something from you. We also have to deliver too. And sometimes, in all honesty, we've asked for things and then we have not also supported as best as we can. And I think we want to eliminate that from happening on both ends, so that we're building partnerships, that we're building a community that offers these things to East Harlem, residents.
No, I think as we get the management team pulled together, et cetera, the on the ground folks, having an advisory group would be very helpful, because it also will help us guide that, get us in front of the right people to help the community, which is ultimately what we'd like to do, because we want the facility to be successful, and it's only going to be successful if the community is pleased with it, and we're exposing the right people to golf and growing the game. But I would add, since this is a Parks and Randall's Island Park Alliance agreement, I would ask that they be invited to be a part of it, because there are a lot of decisions that Drive Shack cannot make without their involvement, because of the agreement that we have with the city park department and the Reynolds Island Park Alliance. So again, the word has come up a number of times, and it's a great word. Collaboration is key here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and Paul, I'll just add that, originally this did come through Parks and Open Space Committee, and that's generally where it is. I think for us as a community, we're learning how sometimes something just doesn't affect one committee. And, we wrestle with, do we develop a task force for members from each of these committees? Or do we have you come? And sometimes we know it's redundant, but sometimes we also have different approaches to looking at a particular issue or resolving a particular issue. And we don't always see the other committees. So, I sit on both of them for many years. So I do, and I was very involved with Sport Time in a similar situation when they've expanded and brought their pieces. And we want these things, these rich things to come to, and I don't mean rich in terms of money, but rich in terms of culture and what opportunities they can offer. And again, you never know what sticks with somebody. So, Rev, do you have other questions, or the other members? Yeah.
So much. It does require collaboration and innovation. And yes, all the parties will have to be at the table. So just making sure that the community level, we're also there. But I appreciate, and I'm looking forward to it, because I do admire the work of Drive Shack.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Other thoughts, other members? Anybody want to chime in? I will take, I guess, the informal vote of what this committee is leaning to, so that when we do have the meeting with the executive committee, and we'll all have an informed decision to make. I've mentioned my concerns, and I think Rev raised a good point. And I don't want to belabor anything, because you're not the only entity that it comes, and this is how we're trying to improve a process. Even the presentation form we created about 6 years ago, because we need to kind of streamline things and focus them, and understand when entities come before the committees and before the board, what do they want? What are they looking for, so that we can address those properly. And I'll say this: no matter what committee an entity comes through, it is still the full board that must approve it. So it's not any one committee. A committee can approve something, but going before a full board doesn't guarantee that can be approved. And that's why I think it's very healthy to drag you into other committees as well, so you have more members informed exactly what are we voting on and what may be the impact for the community, both positive and, I won't say negative, because I'm a social worker. So what areas we have to develop better as a way.
Yep.
You like that one, Red? We all been in here a long time together.
We're not dragging them, we're inviting them.
Yes, exactly, inviting. No, and that's why I did say I would like for them to come. I think I mentioned my concerns. I think if there are any recommendations, if we know what they are tonight, I would definitely want to share with Paul and Ricardo, so that they at least have some sense of how they may respond, not only tonight, but again, before executive, and also with economic development. Again, if members feel that there's certain things, I would say let's work with Esperanza High School, because that is a high school in this district of our kids. We can coordinate that with the superintendent to make that connection. And I think sometimes you don't always have to begin to bite off the whole apple. Let's just take a piece of it and chew it and make sure we like it, so that's my suggestion. If other members want to kind of chime, again, I will take an unofficial vote. Carly, we could take an unofficial vote, right? Or do we have to make it official? Because we're really going to discuss it.
I don't really know what an unofficial vote is. You can reach a consensus without voting. I'm not gonna call the roll, and I'm not gonna, you shouldn't entertain any motions if it's not an official vote.
Okay, so I guess I'll frame it this way. First, are there any direct suggestions that we want to provide to both Paul and Ricardo, recommendations, concerns? I think Rev kind of stated it very clearly. We would like to have an advisory or a stake in looking at, being part of. We would have liked to have a little bit more collaboration. And it would not be just this committee, it would be collective of the board of what things we may want to, specifics, economic development's going to come at you with some specifics. I can assure you of that one. Yes, Angela, are you raising your hand or?
Hey, Dave,
Russell, yes, I've been waiting to hear from you, Russell. I'm sorry.
I think Robert had his hand up before I did, and let's see.
Yeah, I was gonna say Robert has his hand up and he put something in the chat.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
want to say
Robert.
something as well, but I don't want to supersede what Robert may have said. Want to say.
Robert, why don't you take our lead and then we'll move to Russell. Thank you, Angela, for helping seeing what I couldn't see.
Great, thank you all. Yeah, I think I just wanted to stamp two concepts. As you all may know or remember, I serve as superintendent for a charter school district in our community that has a high school and deeply committed to this work. We're trying to expand our programming. I think something that jumps out at me though that I would like to see and make sure that it's critical in the conversation is when we talk about economics and access to new opportunities. Part of what I noticed is under the youth programming piece, there was a lot of celebration of weekday free, weekday. And that is not a great access point for families who are often working multiple jobs. And often what I've seen, I'm not from New York, I've been here for 3 years, is when economic development projects come into communities, in the name of creating the allure of access, we create the free and the discounted options at times, at periods that actually do not work for working families and particularly single working families. And so in the name of economic access at the intersection of race and education and jobs, it is not comforting to see weekday programming as the primary free option in the summers, et cetera, because I know for our families through research and data that 46% of our families cannot access recreational opportunities during the weekday. They've given us that data. And so if that is the primary point of access, I think that's a point of contention. And then secondly, ensuring that when we talk about summer programming, that we're cognizant around the areas of transportation and safety and what that looks like. And being very honest that we're going to create the conditions for people to be able to access this level of entertainment. And then thirdly, to just name the reality that East Harlem is experiencing deep amounts of gentrification, often as a result of development. I am not opposed to new development. I see its value. And I am honest enough to talk about what these kinds of developments tend to do to communities, tend to do to housing prices, tend to do to apartment rates, tend to do with access points. And as we see the Upper East Side pushing more and more north in its development, we have to be honest around what a golf entertainment center might mean for displacement, might mean for increased rates of apartments, might mean for developers, might mean for transportation, et cetera. So I just want to stamp that while I appreciate the theory, that I look forward to some very honest and raw conversations on whatever the advisory council is around economics, around access, around gentrification, around racial marginalization in these realities, and around ensuring that people who have young folks are also at that table to speak for themselves and for us to not assume that we can program without the voices of families. I just wanted to stamp that. Thank you all.
Thank you much, Robert. I think, you echo a lot of feelings in this community and how things are. And I also want to apologize because I think we have quite a few charter high schools in this community too that could benefit and are more local to East Harlem and Randall's Island than other communities that may have opportunities afforded to them. Russell, please.
Okay, this is always a challenge for our community when the introduction of luxury sports. So as in was with tennis, the residents, the Harlem residents, that we are primarily pre-gentrification. We tend to have our focus on traditional community residents, as I am, lifelong. So I want, this is a business that you're bringing to Randall's Island. It's not a charity. So I would like to talk in business terms. I would think that you would, on my position representing the community board and on this committee and on the open space committee, which I didn't speak, I would think you should look at this as what investments are you're bringing to our community. Oftentimes people throw around community benefit agreements. That's just a nice sophisticated label that puts on the guise that something is being done, and it usually doesn't come to pass under that auspices. So I'm thinking that your company should be thinking about how do you make an investment in gaining the interest, involvement, engagement of our young people, young adults, all those that are included. How will you have a standalone program to help develop the skill level? And this is going to take something over time. So whereby, when I say luxury sports, they are oftentimes sports that golf, tennis, lacrosse, all that requires equipment, special training, that's matched with interest to get that to work. So I'm saying this, as Robert said, we talk about free. I'm looking at free as a mandatory requirement, that it can't be of any charge for you to be here unless you're making a conscious effort to make an investment to attract, engage, train young people, the audience that we designate. In prime time, Robert may alluded to Monday through Friday. I'm saying 7 days a week, as long as it's open from 9 a.m. to 12 to midnight, prime time included, whatever they may be, that's convenient. We have other challenge areas as far as employment. Often you'll have a whole list of 350 jobs that may full-time permanent jobs will be here. Many of them will require training, whereby with the Columbia University's community benefit agreement, they had all these jobs that were available, but yet they were unionized jobs that provided no training. So therefore the community was automatically cut out of that because they didn't qualify. So just to consider, positions that you have should be some, I don't like using some of the traditional set aside jobs or whatever that may be. It should be a percentage that we negotiate that has to be guaranteed placements by percentage, whereby a percentage of that have to be provided training for those jobs. You're the experts in that arena. I don't think there are too many natural golfers in Harlem. When I say natural, I mean natural born here, raised here, not migrated here, that interest in golf. But I know the desire would be there among young people. Those are things I just want you to consider, how you make an investment and get a return on your investment after you make the investment in the community. I'm finished.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and I'm glad you shared tonight. Any other thoughts before we kind of give a consensus one way or the other? And Ricardo and Paul, I thank you for bearing and being patient with our system as we ensure that we make sure that all the voices are heard in the community, and that, you know, again, we all see things a little differently sometimes and what's important and how we value things. So as I have to be part of the executive, and again, all members are welcome to be there as well and have an opportunity to voice. But I do have a vote that I will have to take, and I want to represent this committee and not represent necessarily my own views. While I've preached some of my criticisms tonight and at the previous meeting, I share with the sentiments of my fellow board members that have all expressed their views. So I will ask, I am okay with supporting this project. Again, I'm hoping in good faith that we could identify schools, both charter and public schools. And again, I kind of identified one as I feel strongly that maybe we could work together to set aside some quality times that meet the needs of both the community. You know, I'll just say this, y'all got what, 12 extra places? Those 12 are ours, and y'all can't give them to nobody else but us in terms of the use at those prime times. And I'm just going to the extreme, but I'm okay with supporting this. How do other members feel? Again, I want to represent the committee and not myself, because I have to. The executive. All those that could support this and would like to see this through fruition with maybe some adjustments as we go forward. Is everybody okay with that? Is anybody really would like to see something different? So
I would suggest that the committee consider that if we were to support it, that we would agree to supporting it with conditions. If there's no conditions, I wouldn't want to blindly say I want to support it. So if it can be stated, I would support it with conditions if those conditions were met.
Yeah, I do just want to make
Thank
a
you.
clarification after speaking with Angel earlier today about this. So Paul, can you confirm that you are asking a letter of support in support of the design for PDC, for the Public Design Commission?
That,
Okay.
Is
yes,
it
that's
just the
correct.
design?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I
okay,
just,
so what they have come before us is not on the whole shabeel, right? The whole package, but is in the entity of the design. And this is something that was there. This is being renovated, redone to upgrade it to the new millennium. I remember hearing you talk about we didn't talk so much tonight, but all the wonderful electronic ways to play the game and monitor and track things. And, you know, to me, that's another way of learning math and literacy that we can help teach kids. I try to disguise learning so that we make it fun for kids, right? So, but I think in Russell's point, this is where I think like what Rev kind of went back to, and again, is we need more time with this to be able to come up with those more specific things as a committee to come back and say more directly. And that's why I don't want to just generalize what we do want. And this is sometimes where we lose as a community. But this is going forward. We're not stopping this. Do we approve the design of the place? I guess that's what is being asked of us, right, Carly?
yeah, technically, I just think that's something that's important to consider. Like, we obviously want to, work with Drive Shack and make sure that our youth and our families have access to this facility at reasonable times, at times that are accessible to them. And I think that it's worthwhile to pursue that. But I also, in my conversation with Angel, kind of spoke about, I don't, this letter is being addressed to PDC. I don't necessarily, regarding the design, I don't know if PDC is going to, I don't think it's in their scope of work to take into consideration conditions.
Other accommodations, right?
Yeah, and if you want to include that, that's fine. I just don't know how, I don't know how fruitful that is going to prove for the committee. I just think it's important to note that. And if you do decide to, vote with conditions, that's of course perfectly fine. I just want you to know that it's likely, it's PDC is likely not, that's not within their scope of work. And
It
that's
will
who
not
they're-
impact what they have to decide on. They're looking for sign off on the physical layout, how it's gonna look, right, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Well,
So how many times will they be coming back? So let's just say that this is going to be rubber stamped through. It's a matter of time. So when we talk about it's been approved, all the structural things that's going to happen. So when we talk about usage, and then where will we be then? I understand what we're voting on now. So it's of no consequence now of about the usage. So this is a fruitless discussion right now.
I wouldn't say it's fruitless because we're having discussion with Drive Shack.
For our concerns. I mean, this is, if it were noted, our discussion should have just been streamlined to design.
Well, so
not expressing our other concerns.
yeah, I hear where you're coming from, Russell, and I hear that, and you know that's the question people raise about community boards and our roles. But at the same time, we do have Drive Shack. We have Paul and Ricardo here tonight discussing the programming that they would like to bring youth in East Harlem, and they're here at Environment, Open Space and Parks Committee's recommendation, and I think that there truly is value in that. But I just felt like it was important to make that note about PDC, especially after my conversation with Angel. But it's not to say it's not to say that this conversation is fruitless. I don't think it is. I just think that, you know, taking a position with conditions might not achieve the outcomes that you want.
I'm just saying that would be discussed at a different time, is why I'm saying it's fruitless for tonight. I'm not saying let's just say that's a misplaced word or description, but I'm saying for tonight, being focused on even anybody's concern. We're just talking about the design. We're here, present this presentation, and this is what our discussion should be framed. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What are your concerns about it? And move on. And if they got to come back 4 or 5 different times for different areas to have discussions about whether they go in there, that's what we are. Ma'am, I was a part of that prime time with the tennis situation. That went on for 5 years.
Sure did.
At least.
Sure did.
So that's
Well,
what I'm saying. I'm coming from that vantage point. This is just approval for the structural thing. Let's focus on that.
But you know what, Russell, sometimes these things are not independent. And I think we do sometimes need to take that look at them. And if you feel that strongly, then again, again, these are the concerns that should continue to follow this project. And we address them, and that we hope that in all good faith, as Ricardo and Paul hear these things within their capability to make some changes or to even advocate on their end. But, again, I think this is the conjux of what we deal with as community board members. And, I often say is we should mandate, we should require, we suggest. Well, I take your suggestion, I go do something else, right? But how can we write real requirements into this? And this is bigger than both Ricardo and Paul in this particular project. This is indicative of everything that comes before our committees. And again, like we sat in it in parks, both of us, and we're here now with it here again. And it's going to come before economic development. And you know what economic development is going to be. Where are the jobs? We want 1/3 local hiring for the construction. I mean, it's all party line that doesn't go anywhere. And then, I don't want to get into a whole nother level. I think, again, do we support this or do not? Do we support it with an idea that we would want to ensure that with the wonderful design that we're saying we love and okay with, that there's another piece that comes with that design? Whether it gets upheld to or not, let's see if we get the local hiring at that 30%, 33%. And again, Paul and Ricardo, this is not a truth. This is more how we have to struggle within ourselves as well. How we go forward in addressing the concerns, or when people come asking us for something when they already got what they want. You got your place, right? Whether we don't approve the design, that's not going to stop this project. And then we have to go and say, then what value do community board members have in giving their time, making suggestions, investing things, if we really don't have a say? That's beyond the both of you. Ricardo, as you mentioned, there's a lot of wonderful designs in the work. I've been to Icon Stadium and used all those facilities with Children's Aid, and they're wonderful places to be. And I want our kids to see wonderful places and to participate. Because again, if you can't see it, you'll never dream it. So I need to be able to show kids something so they can have these dreams. And Russell, you know, we battled with all of them. So I know what you feel. And right now, I think we need to battle and make sure they get into some charter schools in our community and get into some of our high schools. And then we have to be the advocates to that. So, we officially, we don't even have to take a position. I'll go into executive and raise the concerns that the committee raised in terms of the particular issues. And we'll move forward. Again, even in executive, Paul and Ricardo, I think you both know, it still's got to go before the full board. We will vote on it if it's after full board. We will rectify it at the next full board, yada, yada, yada. Robert's Rules of Order. Right, Carly? Am I wrong? Maybe a little. So I would just say this. I think we've noted some of the things that we feel are important that should be included as part of this project as a whole. We will identify those things and make them and present them at executive and as well as the full board. The full board will take an position on this. And that's where we'll be. I think we were kind of stuck in parks as well and not wanting to speak for other committees or the full board at that moment because of the overlap. But it's a nice design. I'm glad I got to see it on a nice second big screen.
No, I appreciate the time, the entire committee and you, David, in particular. I mean, you are the gatekeeper so that we get to the right folks to do what we want to do here in getting people exposed to Drive Shack and the game of golf. So I do really appreciate that we had the opportunity to do this. I'm very happy to hear you do like the design. It reinforces our position that we think we're doing the right thing.
No, and I also love that, and hopefully it will be part of the summer program, out there, because I send kids out there. The whole camp goes out there 1 day a week, different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And again, kids need to be exposed to different things, and
Absolutely.
so is there any other pressing kind of thoughts, or, if anybody wants to make sure that I present a position at executive, please reach out to me again. We are a committee. It is not my committee. It is the Youth and Education Committee of CB11. And that we all have a say in what we feel is important. Natasha, did you want to add something?
Oh, no.
And John, I'm sorry, we'll get to John.
No, I was just turning my camera on. I realized that I turned it off because I was paying attention to the presentation.
John, have a second screen. It helps with the presentation. John, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Well, all I really have to say is that I feel that this is a long process. As you know, everything is almost like an act of Congress around here. So the thing is, because I'm of the opinion that we will see Paul and Ricardo several times in the near future. So the thing is that because it's a thing where several things are going to have to be hammered out. So the design, whenever we vote on the design, we will, and then we're going to go from there. And I have a feeling I'm going to see them quite a bit. So the thing is what I feel that we should take into consideration the letter of support for the design, and then when we're ready to vote on it, that we do.
Well, we will all have the chance to officially vote at the full board. So we will all have that vote officially. So thank you, John. Natasha?
I just want to say, because I am still a youth in this community. I am 17. I really do hope that you're able to work with the schools and be able to bring opportunities, because a lot of it's just exposing to different sports. Like when I was in 5th grade, they took us to the tennis center, and that I didn't even know, I knew what tennis was, but I actually really enjoy tennis now. So I think it's just exposing people to like David said, exposing people, the younger kids in the community, to different things that, it may end up being what they want to do. And when they're younger, it's a lot easier for them to pick up on the skill.
Very well said, Natasha.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Paul and Ricardo. Really great to hear the presentation again. I look forward to the work and how we can build this relationship and provide opportunities for everybody to benefit from the golfing range. So,
Terrific. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
thank you all. So, in short, I will present that, we are in support, but there, again, I'll just say this. Even though we wouldn't want to set up a situation, I don't think Paul and Ricardo did this, where people come only asking for one thing, so we don't address all the other concerns we have about that particular project. So, I would always say that if you feel strongly that something needs to be included or you need conditions, present it, offer it. They can only say no, right? But again, maybe that's where we begin to negotiate different things that are win-win for all of us. So, in short, I'll communicate in executive and also at full board what were some of the feelings about members felt in relation to this particular project and what kind of conditions we think would benefit this community. Paul and Ricardo, you're always free to reach out to us as well. Again, I would like to make some bridge between the district and how we can begin. And sometimes, again, let's begin with a pilot, begin small, right? We can plan now, place doesn't open for another year, right? So we have some time to work on some of those suggestions. And we hope that you take those with you and we're able to work forward, going forward. We also do need to move on because with all that speech I said about in the beginning, we need to move things on. We still take long with everything. But again, sometimes we don't want to rush through things either because we want to make sure that we give the proper time to process. The worst thing is to not to process something and then be unhappy with a decision afterwards. So, again, if we go through the motions and we take the time, I think we could all be better with the decision we finalize or come up with together. So we do have to let Carly take the lead with this and Red Brown, because this is the new piece that the vice chair has to play in terms of the district needs and community statement of district needs and budget. I get it all confused. I'm getting tongue tied. Anyway, Red Brown, Carly, I defer to you and I can be quiet and listen to both of you.
Hi. So last month we talked about the district needs, specifically as it related to the public input we received from the survey we conducted over the summer. This month we're focusing on our budget requests. The goal of tonight's meeting is for the committee to submit a recommendation for the addition, revision, or removal of a budget request that we submitted last year. So yeah, we're gonna move through each request. To facilitate the conversation, Angel, Marlene, and I met and we provided a recommendation from the staff. You are not obligated to take our recommendation or agree with it. In fact, we want to hear your thoughts. We want to start a conversation about the requests. We won't take it personally if you don't take our recommendations.
Carly, may I just add something? I think what you just said about the recommendations from the three office people that run these committees with us, we change. Y'all don't change as much. So I think whatever you provided as recommendations are very valuable. because you see the trends that may have been changed over time or requests that many of us may not see as being new members in the committee. So I do value your recommendations, and I would extend to the committee that we as much as we can support those recommendations.
Yes, but you know, there are recommendations, there are instances in which I am relying on committee input because, you know, I have some gaps of knowledge as well. Rev Brown and I, we spoke beforehand and we reviewed each of these requests. The way I want to go about doing this is go one by one. I'm going to read out the request, give the reason for the staff recommendation, give Rev Brown an opportunity to speak, and then take comment from the committee. It is getting late and I do want to respect everybody's time. I don't want to steamroll over anybody. I just ask that, you know, if you do have a comment or a recommendation, maybe jot it down and try when you respond to keep it, you know, concise and succinct. Not that I have much of the ability to do the same, but yeah, let's just try our best here. But I don't want to, you know, just steamroll, rush through these because it is important that we have this discussion. So I'm just going to get started. So we have a total of 14 requests to review. We're going to go through the capital requests first, which are think school improvements, school buildings, think, you know, more expensive costs. So I'm just going to start now. So the first one was about a technology upgrade. We talked about remote learning earlier today, and I talked about you know, my own confusion about this, about what to do with this. I recommend revising it to reflect current circumstances regarding remote learning. I'm really glad that Claris was here to provide her insight. So my final recommendation would be to revise this to you know, reflect that, you know, remote learning isn't the standard right now, but we should continue to invest in remote learning devices as COVID is still an issue. Rev, I'll let you go.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Carly, and thank you so much for onboarding me in this process. So as we were looking at closely at the various tracking items, I also recommending that we revise it. There are oftentimes we make a request and things change, but our request stays the same. And then they always get kicks back to us. So if we can just bring this to a point of updating it current day, I think we'll be in a stronger position. Besides, we were given, when Carly emailed out the agenda, we also got best tip practices on how we should shape and go forward with use in developing our requests. And there are a number of things that's in that little booklet. So we get time to look at that to help us moving forward. But I believe we should revise this one to make it current, you know, bring it up to date. And so this way we'll get better traction.
Okay. Does anybody else have any input? Do you agree with our recommendation to revise it? Do you think that we should delete it altogether? I'm gonna wait for raised hands. If I see no raised hands, I'm going to move forward. I see David unmuted.
I'll just reiterate real quickly, as Clara said, I think COVID has changed the world. Remote is going to be a part of learning, whether it's in class now. Kids are asked to bring in these tablets, and it's fine if a kid has one at home or already had one, but there's still many kids that don't need the upgrades. She didn't mention, but also last year CEC4 actually took money and bought a bunch of headphones to give out to kids so that they would have these. So yeah, we should continue this and change it to more reflect the continued needs of technology for kids as part of learning.
Great. I am just going to write, I know that she had also mentioned the need for headsets and chargers and that sort of technology.
Yeah, accessories maybe we could put with that and then list what they are, parentheses or something.
One of the things was she said they needed keyboards.
Thank you. All right, Rev Brown, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just want to say, oftentimes we think about the auxiliaries, and bandwidth is also important because so many of the devices are being connected to the source. So we want to make sure that there's a true assessment to make sure we have the adequate bandwidth to accommodate the virtual learning, especially when we're on site, because all those various tablets and devices are now drawing upon the resources.
Absolutely. And free bandwidth for families living in transitional shelters, transitional living. You know, that was a big thing. Again, these things were all given free for a period of time, but no longer given free.
Okay, so it sounds like we're revising that, accepting the recommendation. We're going to move on to the next one. Speaking of bandwidth, this is a capital request to improve an interior building component, specifically the wiring at PS 146. The School Construction Authority has a very specific way of prioritizing a funding request based on prioritization. They did not fund it at this time. During our district budget consultation with them, they had told us that they actually followed up with this request at the school and determined that the wiring was adequate, but the staff still recommend adding it. I think our position is that we trust the principals in determining the need of their schools. And although School Construction Authority has a particular way of funding their requests, it's still worthwhile to include these sorts of capital requests on our budget request, because the next one you'll see, even if the funding doesn't come from the city, like the capital budget, or it can be funded still by elected officials, and that's the instance for the next request. But I'm just going to not get ahead of myself and just say our recommendation was to keep, and that's what add means. Just add it to the next year's register. Rev Brown, do you have anything to say?
No, I'm in agreement. You know, we have to keep at it because just like everything else, it may take, 10 years, but if we give up on it, we'll never get it, just like the Espionage, so we think, so just continue to add it.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to note was that we actually got this request from the list that Dr. Christie sent to us. We have not received a list since, but it might be worthwhile to take a look at that list once again and see if there are other capital requests from that list that we did not include, and consider including it this year.
Yeah, or if there are other schools in a similar situation where we could package it and put both school names, right? Maybe. Like Fund 146 and then 171, and I'm just, or, this is where it always has gotten tricky with them. You put too much and then they tell you they can't because, or in part, but we never know which part, so. All right, let's go. Next one. We're in favor.
Okay, so we're gonna keep that one. All right. All right, the next one is the interior building component. So I recommended removing this. It's the bathrooms at Lexington Academy. That's because it was funded. The budget requests, the register that they gave to us don't reflect this funding because they initially did not receive funding. But the borough president has been really set on upgrading these bathrooms. And I know she put some funding in, and I'm not sure if anyone else did, but I know she did. And the project was funded. So I recommend removing it because it's done.
So this is where I'm a little curious. It's on the 5-year plan. Other things can bump it out if they get a higher priority.
But and that's true in some instances, David, but as it relates to this particular item itself, and we're looking at it, we're tracking the items, the request, it has already been funded by another entity. So we can remove it from there.
And we just track it then, right? Is that the idea?
Well, yes, we can do that.
What did you say, Carly? It looked like you just mouthed it.
Oh no, I know that the borough president dedicated funding specifically for this project.
In entirety?
I would have to, I can't speak.
All right, so
in
let's just
full.
hold, let's, if it's funded in entirety, let's take it off. If it's not, we need to keep it on.
Okay.
Because it's within the 5-year plan. It's not like it's gonna be done tomorrow. The 5-year plan changes every year. Because this was something that used to be on, that got bumped out. Now it's back on again, because it
Yeah,
got funded.
we've been trying to get those bathrooms fixed ever since I like went there.
And that was a
And
long time
that was
ago.
like 9 years ago. So it's,
Right.
and they've gotten worse.
Yeah, no,
Well, I'll follow up to make sure. I'm gonna put it as remove. I will follow up to see if, you know, that's a concern, if that's something that we should keep on our radar for that reason. I will say, and it's less so with the capital request and more so with the expense request. We have a very limited number of requests that we can submit. We technically can submit more than the recommended amount, but they won't be considered. So, and they won't be considered priority. So there is more leeway with capital to keep it on.
so let's
But-
just find out if it's funded in full, right? Then we know we just got to track it. If it's not funded in full, we need to make sure that we advocate to get the money. I mean, I only know that because I'm in that building. You know, that's the building I work out of. And them bathrooms is bad.
They like broke down like for like a week during the summer, one of them. Right?
Yes, this is
Yeah.
true. Because it had a screw sticking out of the, you know, we won't get into that. But anyway, let's just find, why don't we, if we can all agree to say, if it's funded in full, we'll put it and just track it. If it's not funded in full, we'll keep it. We'll know before that, right?
And I will say that one thing that came up at multiple of our committee meetings is, you know, what happens with these requests once we remove them from our register. There's been a recommendation to move them to a separate sheet that, you know, tracks old requests to make sure that they're followed through. And I think that's something, I think that is important to do. Yeah, I hear that. And
And that's what Jason, I think Jason always preaches that, right? Track it. So,
yeah. Okay.
okay, next one.
The next one is, we submitted 2 requests for Peter Minuit Playground, asking to upgrade it to include a playground. It's not even a playground at this point, I don't think. But
No.
regardless, we submitted 2, one with DOE, one with Parks, to kind of, you know, see if like DOE would put funding in because it's next to a school. However, OMB just transferred it over to the Department of Parks and Recreation. And we had 2 requests to the Department of Parks and Recreation for Peter Minuit Playground. That committee decided to keep the request for Peter Minuit Playground. So I recommend removing it from this committee's side. It's important to note, this committee should know that the mayor's office installed a soccer pitch at Peter Minuit. It's temporary, and also we want upgrades. We want to upgrade to the whole park, not just this. Yeah. So we recommended removing it from this list, but it is on the Parks Committee list.
And may I just add, and keep in mind something that I learned I wasn't aware of, that all throughout there are 40 capital projects that can be requested on, and there are 25 expense projects. So this is for the community board itself, not just committee level. So we don't want to have redundancy in various committees, further reducing the number of available slots for putting in some other important issues. So with that in mind, it's best to go ahead and remove that one from our tracker.
Speak now if you disagree. If not, I am going to list it as remove. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. So now we're on our expense request. So expense requests encompass programs, think SYEP, Summer Youth Employment Program, staffing, think me, think your teachers, think, you got the idea. And yeah, so we, as Rev Brown mentioned, we have 25 slots. Last year, we submitted 49 expense requests and only 25 were considered priority because, you know, that's the amount that they cap us at. So in other committees, we've been removing them. We've been consolidating one. I do think that there's opportunity to consolidate a few here, but I'm just gonna, you know, go through them and, you know, hear what you guys have to say about it. So the first one is provide, expand, or enhance after school programs for all grade levels. When we talk about the pandemic here, we talk about after school program seats in East Harlem, especially for older youth. The DYCD response was that there are a variety of agency-funded programs in the district for this target population. Additional programs are contingent upon available funding and will be distributed through an RFP process. Organizations are encouraged to apply. I recommended revising this. First of all, we need to revise it to, you know, update the pandemic information. I think it could use a little bit more detail. I also think that there are a few requests here that touch upon the same thing. So when we talk about after school programming for youth, what are we really getting at? Are we thinking, you know, more jobs? Are we thinking job training programs? Are we thinking after school jobs, like work, learn, grow, which we refer to it in another request? Are we thinking reaching out at risk youth? If so, there's another request that I added actually. So I think it's just important to consider what is the goal of this request. I have revised here, but this is one of those requests I wanted to hear from the committee, and I'll open it to Rev Brown first.
You're muted, Rev.
No, I'm in agreement in revising this one. Again, making reference to the tips for submission. It's a really good document for us to look over when we get time so we'll understand how best to craft these requests, but we have to be more specific about what we're asking. Otherwise, it gets thrown out, you know, or gets thrown back.
I think I'm biased. I think, you know, after school for K through 8, it's pretty much okay and covered in our community. It's more for the high school age programming, for after school and early evening programs. Just the way they've set up those models like the Saturday night lights and the night shift facilities. We need those kinds of things as well, specifically for older teens.
That could
work,
be part
learn, and grow. See, I think we have to separate activities kids need and not always think it's always just a job, which is important. The work, learn, and grow is important. There are too few slots during the winter. So I think we do need to keep them separate. But I think there needs to be more after school activities, social, emotional learning, you know. It's covered K through 8. Right now, all the programs can't fill up because of the COVID too and all this. That's covered. It's the older. And there are some programs. The NDA grants that they have for teens is just too few. It's not enough.
I see Natasha has their hand raised.
I just wanted to say that I do agree with David, especially for like the freshmen. I've noticed it's like some of them haven't been in school since the middle of 7th grade. So they're like functioning.
Not where they need to be at this moment, developmentally, because they've missed a lot of time. I don't know if we can hear you, but one of the things I noticed is like even kindergarten kids who have just lost a year and a half of pre-K and K are having trouble adjusting and socializing. But we need more stuff for teens.
I don't think necessarily job training is what we're looking for, like not just job training, because as David said, job training of course is a good thing, but there's like other stuff that need to be like addressed, and the schools are trying to address it, but it's not able to be addressed in a way when they're trying to catch up with the learning gap, and then also trying to catch up with an emotional gap. Like I've seen like teachers trying to help. It's just hard to do both things at once. That's just my perspective on it.
That's really helpful perspective. I think that oftentimes when we talk about youth in our district, we talk about summer youth employment program, the youth who are already accessing those programs. We talk about our at-risk youth, the youth who might live in our NYCHA developments and are more vulnerable to being sucked into the youth violence that occurs in our district. And I feel like I know, at least from my perspective, I wasn't in my recommendations, I wasn't thinking of the youth who I didn't even think of the fact that our freshmen in high school hadn't been in school since 7th grade. So that's a much needed perspective. So thank you. So I wrote down some notes in the side here. If there's anything else I missed, maybe type it in the chat and I'll copy and paste it. I'm going to move on to the next one. I'm going to keep it as revised. So we're going to keep the request and just revise it, update it to strengthen it. The next request is pertaining to the Summer Youth Employment Program. This needs to be revised to reflect that full funding has been restored. So I'm not sure what the committee's position is from here. Do we want to maintain it? Do we want to increase? We also mentioned work, learn, and grow in this request too. And the DYCD response was that further study is needed. So yeah, I recommend revising it. If I don't know if the committee wants to keep it as a summer youth employment program request, or if they want to adjust it to focus more on work, learn, and grow. And that's where I'll open it up to discussion. Rev Brown, you can take the lead as the vice chair of the committee.
I'll defer to David.
So in short, I think, when they say, yes, we got the funding restored to SYP, 70,000, whatever, but the work, learn, and grow is too few. I think Children's Aid gets like a couple of handfuls of kids where we serve 3,000 during the SYP. And again, kids need things to kids need the combination of that work experience along with, and I don't want to recreate new programs of what they think, but again, that's when we ran a community center. You came a day for this, 2 days for this, and and work readiness was part of that. So I would say maybe we need to expand the work, learn, and grow for kids during the school year to provide opportunities for jobs and work experience, and to expand career readiness programming for kids. It's not just the job, right? It's also preparing kids for work. What are the skills you really need to even fill out an application? This is where we lose it. So what do we would revise it to expand the work, learn, and grow to the year. I mean, I think we need to keep it simple, right? It's the program in the essence is a good program. It's just not offered to enough kids. This is where you're right. It gets kind of, do we take up two things, or do we make these and combine it as one, but then we make it big where it doesn't really get addressed? You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, well, fortunately, this is, we have the opportunity to revise and adjust next year. And I think especially with this committee, there's been a lot of revision, a lot of trial and error as it relates to how we submit the needs, like our request to schools for tech funding, and we've tried a bunch of things. Right. And yeah, so there's no harm in trying one thing this year and trying another thing next year. I also think that work doesn't end here when it comes to even though SYEP has been restored, I think that there's work to do beyond our budget request as it relates to SYEP, but it doesn't necessarily mean we need to keep the focus on SYEP. So
maybe the focus is work, learn, and grow So we kind of keep those things separate in terms of work, learn, and grow as a strong entity that needs expansion, as well as the social emotional activities and after school program adolescents need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think after what Natasha said, I think it's good to keep, the first request separate from the second request. With second request, we can, talk about the importance of employment of youth employment for career readiness. We can mention briefly SYEP, but we can focus on the, expanding work, learn, grow to provide youth with year-round employment.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next one. Okay, so we have two sorts of these requests where we request that
Early
DOE.
childhood. No, I'm sorry. I'm
No.
talking to myself. I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, we request that DOE provide more non-teaching staff. So this request is regarding additional teachers to support remote and hybrid learning. The second one, I'm just going to group these together. It's two after this. The second one is about mental health practitioners in school. So I actually recommended removing these because DOE's response was that principals have direct control over their respective school-based staffing needs and will make decisions accordingly. So it just kind of demonstrated to me that the budget request was not the accurate way, it's not the best way to go about advocating for more teachers. I think that we need to, first, my opinion is that we need to, talk to maybe Dr. Christie, talk to Claris, talk to people who might have like more direct access to principals and see what the needs are and what the holdup is to meeting those needs. It just didn't seem, we got the request for the same request for both of them, saying that, this is not really a budget request. Principals have control over this. Curious
Yeah, but it's all based on budget, right? So if I need 50 teachers, I may not have the room for another, like again, I'm in that school. I'm no cost to the principal other than what he gives me. Like we don't take any money resources from them. It's collaborations. And this is, again, the funding, what comes down to it. I couldn't be in that school unless DYCD gave me money to be there. And they don't cover it all.
Yeah. And that was the thinking behind these requests. And I was confused when I got this response. I guess where I struggle is, especially the expensive requests, they're like prime real estate. And I don't want to remove something if the committee feels that it needs to be there. And of course not. I guess I just, the response we got from DOE was really not useful at all. So my thinking was like, okay, like maybe we can use this space to instead request something else. But of course, you don't have to, sorry.
I mean, a few months ago, they added another 100 social workers to a school system that services 1 million kids, right? How much is the impact is that really making? And how many schools are they really at, right? And how long do I really, so I'm in a school now. So there's a therapist in the school. Therapist caseload is 20. There's a school of 700. I serve the 20. I'm not serving 700. So that's fine, but you're not really making an impact. And I think that's so maybe we're not advocating, we have to advocate for the funding to provide these additional services. Because DOE ain't hiring that many, it's nonprofits. Union Settlement provides the therapist. I provide the prevention, right? The school doesn't pay for those things. This goes back to where we should be looking for DYCD to fund these programs.
So I heard you directly mention the mental health services one. So I went down to the mental health practitioner request. I forgot to mention that any request that we do remove, not that I'm saying we're removing these, but I made a note to it, is still included in the statement of district needs. So it was never the intention of staff to remove it completely from the narrative.
No.
But
yeah.
But I'm gonna put here funding.
See, I think again, if we keep it, we'll definitely have to be revised. I'm not even saying we have to keep it at this point, because that may not be something that's legitimate at now the thing is, what's happening to all that money from the FAST student funding that's now here in the community? How is that being used? We need to get Caleris back, or what's her name from?
Dr. Christie.
No, I'm talking about the organization that advocated for the money.
Right.
And why it's just not running through my head at this time. Let's continue to go. Go ahead, Carly. We know.
Well, so Natasha has her hand raised, so you can go
Sorry.
ahead and voice that. But I still, yeah. So you go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, no, I just want to say I do agree with David. I keep going back to Lexington because that's the only school that I went to. So that's what I could talk to. But when I was there, we had a whole room of, we had like at one point, like before Children's Aid came, we had a whole room of social workers and support staff. And then the funding got cut. So we didn't have that anymore. So it really is a funding. Every time I hear something about having mental health services in a school, all I hear is funding. Funding is a problem.
And you put a therapist in a school, they got to be medicate for a diagnosis. And not every kid is a diagnosis who needs therapeutic care. And one of the things that they did that we've just been trained in is called the SET training. So maybe there's more ways to get other. SET training is that you come in and do short-term trauma work with kids as they're coming back to school and experiencing these adjustment issues.
And I just wanted to add something. I've heard like a few times it happens where if the school doesn't have the resources to support a kid, they end up moving them somewhere else to another school, which isn't necessarily the best thing for certain people, like taking them out of an environment that they're comfortable with. Like, let's say like they have like a young kid has like friends and like people who they grew up with. And the really big thing was like getting, like they had some sort of trauma and they're reacting in a sort of way. It's going to add to it, in my opinion, if you can't support the kid and you move the kid to another place.
Carly's going, how do I frame this?
I just made her life 10 times harder. I'm sorry.
No, I made it 5 times harder many times. But
So here's what I am thinking. So I'm thinking maybe revising. So rather than revising the first request, assign. I think we should talk about teaching staff. So I would need to revise this to reflect teaching staff. I'm not sure why that's the request, but emphasize the importance of special needs teachers in each school, funding for special needs teachers. And then the other request.
There was also English language learners was also another kind of combination with those teachers, that there are not enough of them in the school system.
Also paraprofessionals, I'm not sure about that necessarily, but I know that.
But see, this is where this gets so expanded and almost gets lost.
Yeah.
Now we're focusing on everybody that there's not enough of in the school. Right? I mean, this is where, I think these are those things that we're not going to get done in this. Without strong advocacy, this is just something that's to take up space and knock something else out that maybe should be more of a priority with the board. See, I'm not saying, again, we have to ask for funding for these specific positions from DOE for teachers and from other entities like OASIS, right? Prevention, people that come in and do these work with kids. We're really getting into what we need to do as the next steps, as opposed to just giving Carly the information she needs to check it off.
No, don't worry about it. But I do see that Rev Brown has her hand raised. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, Rev.
One of the things that came up in conversation when we're looking at some of the additional needs that we were requesting for non-teaching staff and mental health and various others, and oftentimes they pointed it back to the assistant principal. So Carly and I was of the opinion that we should reach out to Dr. Christie and get a better idea on how that works. So briefly, Carly had reached out to her via email, and she said there's a lot of variables. So she wasn't able to answer, specifically in that moment, but see, there's a lot of variables that affect that outcome. So I think it might be good for us, thinking about collaboration, is truly begin working with the principals and the district leads in a greater way so that we can craft these things. A lot of time people are assuming something that's not there. It may be more perception than it is facts. So we want to have the facts to back up the things that we're asking for. That's it.
Go ahead, Carly.
No, that was it. So yeah, that came up specifically related to this next request, which is the providing, expanding, or enhancing English for service speakers of other languages, ESOL services. I recommended revising it, but revising it to indicate the actual need. There is, so we do have data that points to the percentage of families, individuals in our district who speak a language other than English at home. And I just think that this is the sort of request that we need to substantiate with facts. But I also think that all of our requests need that too, is something to consider. Yeah, so I recommend revising it. I think that there might be an opportunity to combine this request with the one above that Natasha was talking about, like just special needs in general, but also not opposed to keeping it separate, just wanted to float that idea.
I still don't know what's best, to double it or include them or keep them separate, because I think it gives the departments an out either way. Too big, too general, you want too many things. Too specific, too little, not enough. So how many requests would that leave us? Again, with the board, we were at 49. Again, combining it is going to strengthen it. Is combining it going to make our case better for both of the issues?
Yeah, I think regardless, it's an issue worth expanding upon in our statement of district needs. And also continuing to advocate for outside of this process, because, DOE doesn't really provide us with the best responses. This received, this is actually DYCD, like they mentioned, okay, so we provide a variety of these programs, additional programs, rely on RFPs, like they don't really receive the best responses to these. So, it's just something to think about. I don't have the answer. Natasha has her hand.
I think without any concrete data of what exactly is the biggest out of everything, not trying to say one thing is more important than the other, but we do need to prioritize. If we have to, I feel like we have to focus on one specific thing in order to get the best outcome.
And I'll just add this. When we say English language learners, who do we think about? Who do we think about? Because what was interesting is this summer, I had a young boy that just came from China who was entering kindergarten. He spoke no English. He was in groups of kids that looked different than him, than he looked at a month earlier. And when again, that's why I said, who do we frame when we talk about? Do we provide the same resources? So in our community, we have a big Asian growing population. And as Jeremy mentioned earlier, wanting to reach out to Eva, to a group that dance for the diversity in our community. But do we always provide, even as we approach and look at English language learners, are we approaching all the different kids that have English language deficits?
A lot of the time,
Yeah.
a lot of times, especially in this district, I see people when they hear like English language learners, they think Spanish, when not necessarily it's not Spanish. And there's kids getting left behind a little bit with the fact that we're just focusing on one specific group of people when there's other, even though they're not the majority, doesn't mean that there necessarily should be a minority. So
Don't have any less need, you know. So I know we complicated things more instead of moving forward, but you know, again, how we prioritize things and how we then focus on things after we just say what we want is very important as well. So, okay, Carly, sorry. Rep Brown got a hand up. What was that from before?
Yes, no, it's up again. And that's where specifics come into play, because the more specifics we are, if we say English is a second language, we're not talking about what the other languages are. They're going to assume, well, there's enough programs and initiatives already to cover that area. But when we highlight individual like the kindergartner this summer, or anyone else like Natasha's referring to, we'll have more specifics and they won't be able to throw that back.
And you know, in all fairness, my staff said, how are we supposed to work with this kid with our deficit?
So you gotta learn Chinese.
and you know what I
it
said?
was a lot of Google Translate.
Yeah, but again, how does this kid feel? You think it's tough for you. This kid is not looking out and seeing other Asian kids in his class that he saw a month ago, right? There's nobody in that class that can communicate with them. And at the end of the summer, I think he helped adjust, and he had a better summer at the end than he did at the beginning. He did pull the fire alarm and had us all evacuate the building.
I don't think that was him, it was another kid, I think, but
No, it was him.
So
are we
okay,
revising Carly and Rev?
Yes, we had to be more specific about that one. Carly?
I would say maybe keep the English language learners one, and let's get rid of the one that's so broad with everybody in it. Maybe we need to do more investigating of where the money is and what it's going to be used for that we hadn't got all these years that we say we got now.
Okay, yeah, I think that's smart, because I think it's a good idea for a few reasons. One, like I said, we only have 25 spaces, and if it's not going to get a good response, why take up that space when another one might get a better response? Yes. But also we can include it in our statement of district needs. And we're working with a fellow to like a community planning fellow to help us gather the facts, to substantiate some of, you know, our some of the things we have written in our statement, and if we have time, also in our budget requests. So, you know, just because we would remove it from the budget request, it doesn't mean that we're removing it from our priorities. So, yeah, okay. So remove this, revise that. Mental health services, what was the position on that? Like the mental health and social workers in schools, was that revised or was that removed?
If we keep it, it definitely has to be revised.
Revised, yeah.
Okay.
Because like Natasha said, you know, she's in her young years, she's seeing the decrease in availability, which had a lot to do with funding. So the need is even greater now, COVID, if you will. So yeah, I think we just need to revise that.
Okay, sounds good to me. All right, let's move to the next one. We just have a few more. Okay, so the next one is a request to ACS to provide, expand, or enhance preventive services and community-based alternatives for youth, talking about our youth that are vulnerable to crime and violence, and funding should be allocated to enhance services that both prevent and provide an alternative. We we didn't get a positive response. It said that the service area is not under their jurisdiction. That's not true. We recommend keeping it. There might be some room to, revise it to include some data. I was on a call this morning where the police department reported, the 23rd precinct reported, was reporting on the 20-day crime stats from 2020 to 2021 for felony assault. In this 28-day, there was a spike of like 12 from, I want to say at least 12. Like it went from like 16 to 28 from 2020 to 2021, and they attributed it to violence by youth in night developments. So I think it's like facts like that we can include, as unfortunate as it is. It's that sort of statistic that can substantiate these sorts of requests. So
We have the actual facts on that, right? I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to measure. I would have to reach out to the precincts to see if they, do measure youth crime compared to regular crime. So I would have to reach out.
Yeah, they kind of do, because I think they, even when they were recognizing last summer, not this previous summer, but last summer with COVID, how violence may have appeared in many eyes to be more youth, but there were a lot of incidences or major incidences that weren't just youth generated, just occurred. So they do keep that. Might be good to reach out to Ayala's office as well, because she may also have. Public safety may have that information. Do you do that? Committee? Colin?
Yeah, I'll just revise, substantiate with data. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next one if no one else has any comment.
Move on.
Right. No hands. The next one is, okay, so now this is the another request to DYCD, provide, expand, or enhance the out-of-school youth program for job training and employment services. This is separate because, there are, youth who drop out of high school. This request is meant to reach them. We do have this request does have is substantiated with educational attainment data, and the staff recommends keeping it. And I'll pass it over to Rev Brown now.
Sorry, I believe we should keep it, because we know how great the need is, right? So to remove it, even though we're still tracking it, I think we need to go back to them again. And while they said that, it's a funding issue, so somebody needs to advocate for the funding. So let's keep it alive and active.
Can I ask you a quick question, Carly? What was the difference between their response with the work, learn, and grow and this response?
So the work, learn, and grow, they just said further study is needed. The other one with after school programs, they mentioned the RFP process. And this one, they talk about, the federal state funds.
Yeah.
The funding again, right?
Yeah, so this one, I feel.
Can we combine the two of them though, then maybe strengthen it, or you think we should keep them separate? Members?
Well, I think that this is just a little different because this one talks about out of school.
So is work, learn, and grow only for kids that are in school? I don't think so.
I'm not sure.
Work, learn, and grow is for 16 and up. I know that.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it is worth exploring what sort of programs they have that are for out of school youth. I don't really know about work, learn, and grow. Like,
I'm thinking more like youth build, right? So that's more like that kind of program for funding, right? Wouldn't this second one be more like for the youth build kind of funding, for those kind of programs for youth? Right, because those are job training, work, and they're for youth that are not necessarily in school.
Oh, Rep. Brown has her hand raised.
Yes, it says that the work, land, and growth is for 16 to 19 years old of age, as of October the 4th, 2021, enrolled in one of the career-ready work, land, and growth schools.
Ah, okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
right. Right, like so Fannie Lou Hamer, that's a children's aid school, they're a work, learn, and grow school, and they're a high school in the Bronx. Okay, I got it, yep. Yeah, we should keep them separate. Yeah,
All
good.
right.
No, I mean, that's the good discussion to have. We don't want to combine something and kind of filter it, where then it loses its uniqueness, especially
Okay. We have just 3 more.
just
So yeah, this one is funding for teaching resources such as classroom materials, specifically relating to PPE. I recommended removing it. DOE said the request has been funded.
I got more boxes of PPE than I know what to do with. Yes, we can remove that.
I think so do we at the
Yeah.
office.
I know. And sanitize all this stuff.
So this next one is childcare and Head Start programs. We talk about expanding childcare, Head Start, 3K and 3K for all, especially to cover after school hours. I recommend keeping this.
Yeah, I think the after school hours is so important because the DOE, now that they're taking over a lot of the 3K and pre-K, they go to 2 o'clock, 2:30, which doesn't really accommodate a working parent.
Yeah. We also saw a lot of these responses about the need for childcare in our public input. The last one, I wanted to hear your thought. This is not a request we currently have. It's a request that I thought maybe we should add, maybe not. Providing, expanding, or enhancing skills training and employment services for high school students at risk of dropping out, specifically for at-risk youth. I think that this possibly can be combined above, and I think that we might want to consider doing that because we're keeping some that I had initially recommended removing. But I do think that if we don't include this, we need to make sure that in our requests, we specify the need for these programs to reach those high school students who are harder to reach.
So is that like, and just hearing what you just said and Reb said about work, learn, and grow in the age, right? Does this strengthen almost the need for the work, learn, and grow programs, right? Just based on what you said, as opposed to a separate entity.
Yeah, it might. I mean, I think that work, learn, and grow and SYEP, from my experience with them, are a little bit more selective, and I don't think it's the youth who are at risk that are actually being selected for work, learn, and grow, and SYEP. So that's why I had considered putting something extra here. I also had thought about maybe we can put this request in instead of the preventive services for youth, the ACS. But I just put that in there just to flag, I don't really, I don't know. I feel like, or maybe we combine this with the very first request, which is just talking about after school programs for older youth, just general programming. Rev Brown has her hand raised, and then I'm just going to open it up to discussion. Rev Brown and then Natasha.
Okay, yes. Now there are programs there. There may not be as many, but there are programs that that service that population with those conditions. So, are we asking for something specifically in the East Harlem area? Because DYCD have programs that specifically address the population of those who are at risk of dropping out and those who may have already dropped out. So I'm not sure how we need to word that. We might need to revisit it.
this is where, again, we got to be careful in combining things that we don't filter them down so they lose the, validity. But then if you keep them separate, sometimes, you split, conquer, and divide, right? Divide and conquer where you lose.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot, I think, Carly, you made a good point a little while ago when you said almost like the first about the just general after school initiatives for older kids, right? And I know I keep going back. K-8 is funded. There's slots. It's 14 through 19 that need these supports. Natasha, you had your hand up. I don't want to.
Yeah, I think it does. Because I think just being in that
We getting a real echo with you.
Tasha, sound
We
like
don't
a
hear-
robot
yeah.
lost batteries.
my internet. Mom's doing the
Natasha, we don't hear a word you're saying. We hear the vibration,
I think
or it's on a delay.
it's on delay. Natasha's on mute.
Right, she's on mute. And stuff. So, Carly, what were you thinking in terms of this being different than the others above? That
I think I was thinking more, and I didn't type out a reason because I was reviewing it again before the meeting. It's like, oh man, I feel like we missed this. I was thinking about having a request or even elaborating in our statement of district needs that focuses on this idea that we have all these programs. We have all these programs that are intended, like, I'm sorry, backtrack. So a lot of the feedback we received was that, let's increase the number of after school programs we have as a deterrent for youth crime. Yet at the same time, like we hear a lot from service providers that, it's really hard to reach those youth who are engaging in this crime or who are at risk of engaging in this crime. So
I think can you
she's on a real delay.
me now?
Keep going, Carly.
No.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a service gap, and I think that emphasis needs to be placed on this idea that we have these programs, but they're not necessarily reaching the youth that we need them to reach. And admittedly, like I'm not familiar with these specific programs that fall under this category within DYCD. So maybe this is just something we talk about on the statement of district needs. But my thinking behind including this is just, it was more of like, okay, let me flag this for myself that I'm not seeing this addressed in our budget request. We have these requests, we have a number of after school program requests, but not really anything about reaching at-risk youth. So that was that.
I guess when they say after school youth, they mean kids are in school. So.
Natasha she put her comment in the chat. What I was trying to say was that general after school programming for older teens may help them be less likely to drop out.
Thank you, Angela. Yeah, and that might be true. I would be curious, it's things like that. I think it's a good idea, Natasha, but I think also you and I and the committee, I think that's something we should, seek additional data for. Like, I wonder, and I know that data, there are gaps in data too.
You know what I could do? I could ask, there's NDA grants that we get at our Hope community that's on 115th and Madison and on Millbank community. I could ask one of the directors to come in and talk about those particular programs that they have, which is this kind of program that provides that adolescent. See, I think, Carly, and going back, it's almost like we need the program that's not just for jobs and not just for a basketball or a rec, that we need this holistic kind of approach of after-school activities, from social emotional to cooking classes for teens to all these other kinds of things, the mentoring. And this ties into like what you're saying. So that's why you drew me back to when we said the first one, in total adolescent programming. But maybe this is something we can work on this year for next year. Let's not overemphasize right now to complete a task. Maybe this is something we really need to work on a little bit more and have youth. This is where I always say, well, what the hell do the youth want, right? We're up here deciding, they go, that's not anything I want. So you're asking for things I'm not going to do. Have we asked the youth what they want?
Yeah. So I put remove, include in SDN. I see that we have hands raised. I want to address them. I'm going to call on Brett Brown, then Natasha, then John, and then I think we need to move on.
Yes, and I'll be quiet. I'm muting. Go ahead.
Okay, Carly, I think we should keep it. That's just my opinion. And I think what it does, it creates a conversation, and it also enables us to look and see where we're lacking in some of those areas. There may be a program here or two, but how much is it serving the population that falls in that category? I think that it's warranted, so long we're not exceeding, the number of requests, that we begin to shape this and keep this as an item, because it's very, very important.
Okay, thank you, Rev. I'm gonna go to
my 2 mics.
All right, Natasha, your turn.
Can you hear me now before I even start talking? Okay. What I was thinking is, if like David mentioned, if it was the social emotional, or the what the kindergartens for the 8th graders get, where they have the homework help and the social emotional learning, and then the cooking class and stuff, that would be that. I don't know necessarily if that would help address the issue, but it certainly, I don't know. It's just, I think if it was very the after school programming was very I'm sorry, I'm tired. I'm trying to think about what I'm supposed to say. I think you get what I mean. If the after school program was very not comprehensive. Yeah.
No, you're don't worry about it. You are. I see the frustration, Natasha.
No, but I think what you also trying to communicate, tell me if I'm wrong, is that it's diverse, that it offers different things to different kids. Because not every kid comes in to play basketball. Not every kid comes in to do homework help. Not every kid comes to the Keystone Leadership Group, right? But they come, and they all come for different, and we need to be able to provide, and that's why I want holistic. It needs to be job training. It needs to be work readiness. It needs to be homework help. It needs to be tutoring. It needs to be mentoring. It needs to be cooking classes, because cooking, we teach literacy, math, and how to follow directions. Punto, that's it, let's go. Next one, Carly. Keep it, we'll revise it and make it, strengthen it. But I think, again, as some of these things overlap, how do we strengthen them, but also keep their own individuality, so that we're very specific in what we need or looking to happen, right? What's the outcome we want? The outcome is that the meeting should be over in 2 minutes.
Yeah. John, your turn, and then we're going to move on.
Okay, well, David, I agree with you. The thing is that after school programs like that, the thing is that it should be all things to all people, because no 2 kids are alike. The thing is that they need different things. They want different things. So that's something you should work on. Now, I have one other thing, and this is my personal opinion. The thing is that years ago, they had job training in high school. They used to have a thing called an industrial diploma. The thing is that there were 3 different diplomas: academic, industrial, and general. So that means they had electrical shop, wood shop, automotive training, and all that was taken out. And the thing is, and I personally feel that if you give a young person something that they're interested in, that may keep them in school. But a lot of people are not interested in algebra and biology. So the thing, and also the thing is, not only are you giving them an education, you also giving them skills in order to go out here and get a job.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John.
All right, so we're keeping it. Let's go. We're adding it, right?
That's
That's
it.
the thing. We're adding it.
That's it. We're done. Thank you all for
Wow.
your participation. I know it's very late.
We thank you,
We'll try
Carly.
again next time, David.
Good try, Carly. I don't understand.
We'll talk about it later. All right. So Leroy isn't here, so I think I advise skipping this.
Yes, we'll leave everything else for next month. We'll keep it minimal. Again, the budget process continues all year. This is one of the kind of points where we really need to focus, support the district manager and his whole crew in getting this done, because Carly, you've done a lot of work. I know you put in time with all the presentations you've done with the, and the paperwork. It's been wonderful, and we thank you for it. So
Thank you very much.
we got to do roll call. Any
yes.
last thoughts? Okay, roll call, everybody.
You got
John,
it.
is your hand up again, or is that one before? I don't know.
That's down. Andino? Brown?
Present.
Donadell?
I think I'm still here.
Giordano?
I'm going to walk the dogs. They waiting. I'm here.
Green? Green?
I'll see you in a minute.
Harvey?
I'm here.
Heredia? Martin?
Thank you all for staying.
That was a firework. Robinson Teague? Yeah, my God. Rodriguez?
I'm here and I gotta take the SAT tomorrow.
Oh, okay. You're ready.
Get some rest.
I was frozen. I'm here.
You'll be fine, Natasha.
We got you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Scott?
Here.
Schuler?
Here.
Woo? All right, we're done.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, everybody.
Natasha.